Incredible. I've become the original ancestor of humanity. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26. Our Lady does not like sinful children. Miu knelt in front of Lineage, her back straight and her hands on the ground, her hair falling to cover her blushing face. Lineage felt a strong wave of emotions coming from her: fear, panic, uneasiness, and shame. Lineage thought about it calmly and felt that Miu was not to blame for this, at least not entirely. During the fight just now, the kill inscription continuously analyzed the power and skills required by Lineage. He himself was also immersed in that exciting release. It was not until he was locked tightly by Miu that he woke up and felt that something was wrong. Miu, why are you kneeling? What do you think you've done wrong? Miu lowered her head and whispered, I offended my father. Get up. Lineage sat back on the sofa and said calmly, the combat training I just did was my request. You were helping me recall some of my bloodline heritage, so you didn't offend me. Seeing that Miu was still kneeling on the ground, Lineage calmly ordered, make me a pot of tea. Miu obediently stood up, walked to the coffee table, and knelt down, preparing tea for Lineage like a Japanese woman. A moment later, the room was filled with a refreshing aroma of tea, and Lineage suddenly spoke. Miu, don't show your humility when I'm not truly angry. Excessive humility will warp the heart of a strong man. Miu was stunned for a moment, then nodded in understanding, obediently handing Lineage a cup of tea. Sit down and have a drink with me. Miu stood up and sat down, legs together, sipping tea in a ladylike manner. Her elegant appearance made it impossible to associate her with the female warrior from earlier. After finishing the pot of tea, the awkwardness between the two seemed to have completely resolved. Miu gently asked Lineage, Father, do you need me to accompany you when you go out these days? There are too many people watching you now. I'll do something myself. I'll let you know if I need anything. Miu silently lowered her head and whispered, then Father, please be careful. If you need to leave the city, you must tell me. Lineage suddenly asked, what level do you think your current strength belongs to? What kind of enemy would be dangerous? Miu thought for a moment and said, Father's strength is already at the peak of Viscount, but I can't tell his fighting skills. I can only say that they are very high. As for danger, an ordinary Earl is not considered dangerous, but if Father goes out of the city, I must be with him, even if you are very angry. Lineage nodded, indicating that Miu could leave. But as Miu reached the door, he turned back and bravely asked, Father, I gained many valuable insights into combat techniques from the combat training just now. Could you please teach me again in the future? Yes, Lineage agreed without hesitation. He had benefited greatly from the previous combat sparring match. The golden edge of the slaughter inscription was noticeably brighter and more solid than before, and Lineage felt that there were countless hidden techniques waiting to be explored. Lineage now had two ways to increase his strength: either seek out powerful individuals to hone his skills and stimulate his potential, or use the plunder skill again to absorb the essence and blood of others for his own use. Of the two, sparring with Miu was easier and safer. As for the previous misunderstanding, Lineage decided not to sever his bloodline connection with Miu next time. This would probably avoid an embarrassing situation. The inner city of Hongyan City was shrouded in a dense curtain of rain. Pedestrians holding umbrellas and horse-drawn carriages trudged along the streets, making it seem more lively than usual. Yes, carriages. In this technologically advanced world, carriages have become a symbol of luxury and status. Vampires in the inner city pride themselves on owning several thoroughbreds or a complete set of carriages. Lineage walked down Hongyan City's 12th Street, umbrella in hand, as the heavy rain streamed down his umbrella, soaking his new boots. Everything in the two-story building had been personally prepared for Lineage, including over a dozen brand new pairs of shoes. But today, when Lineage wanted to pick out a pair of waders, they were out of stock, so he opted for the least conspicuous pair. It's easy to go from frugality to luxury, but it's harder to go from extravagance to frugality. Lineage had recently felt himself slipping. Just over a month ago, he was a cautious trapper, but after meeting Miu, he had adopted the demeanor of a master, willing to accept everything, no longer worrying about the little things in life. The southern end of Hongqian City's 12th Street bordered the outer city's high walls. As Li Zihe reached the exit, the gates were opening. A group of people, armed with entry permits, were lining up to enter the inner city, while others who had completed their work there were also leaving. Glancing at them, Li Zihe suddenly noticed that the vast majority of those near the gate were wearing raincoats, with only a few holding umbrellas. These two groups clearly belonged to separate groups, subconsciously maintaining a distance from one another. As the gates opened, a few umbrella-carrying individuals disdained to join the raincoat-wearing crowds, simply skipping the line and walking straight to the gate, showing their IDs before exiting. Li Zihe followed suit, but the guard at the gate didn't even wait for his ID. They bowed slightly and let him through, a gesture of deep respect. Li Zihe observed the guards carefully, realizing they were scrutinizing his umbrella. He'd grabbed the umbrella from his new home, and Li Zihe simply found it incredibly handy. The downpour of rain fell silently, creating a quiet atmosphere. But it seemed that the items Mu Yu had prepared for him were anything but ordinary. Mu Yu had also equipped Li Zihe with several carriages of various styles, but today he was heading to the outer city to meet someone Master Luke had introduced him to, and he didn't want to draw too much attention to himself, lest they salute him. As Li Zihe exited the gate, the scenery suddenly changed. A sea of dark, high-rise buildings crowded together, countless figures scurrying in and out like an ant's nest. The streets were narrow and grimy. Despite the heavy rain's constant washing over the world, it couldn't wash away the gloom and oppression that had settled deep within it. The other few people holding umbrellas were met by someone, and they proudly climbed into the cars and drove off, oblivious to the mud and water splash all around them. Li Zihe waited for a moment, but no one showed up to pick him up. He tried to call the number, but the call went unanswered. More and more eyes were fixed on Li Zihe. Fear, greed, and resentment filled the air, and unwilling to attract trouble, Li Zihe walked into the streets of the outer city with his umbrella. After walking along the streets for a while, he found a small grocery store. Under the shopkeeper's strange gaze, he bought a set of waders and a raincoat, transforming himself into an inconspicuous out-of-towner. But behind him, at least 4 groups of people had already set upon him. Li Zihe calmly turned into a small alley, easily shaking off the hyenas behind him with his powerful senses. Then, following the street signs, he headed towards the southwest corner of the outer city. The outer city was vast, but Li Zihe had memorized the names and routes of all the main thoroughfares on a map over the past few days. Now, he navigated the streets and alleys with the skill of a native outer city resident. From time to time, Li Zihe felt a wave of malicious gazes, which he wavered in hesitation, making him realize the deep hostility the outer city held towards outsiders. A group of children ran towards him from the end of the alley, giggling and playing non-stop. The heavy rain and muddy water became their cheapest entertainment, splashing out a rare moment of childish joy. The alley was narrow, and Li Zihe stood against the wall, letting a group of children run by. His body swayed slightly, dodging a few delicate hands and a few sharp blades. But one of the children suddenly turned to look at him, his eyes, which should have been pure and innocent, filled with surprise. "I smell gold coins. He has a lot of gold coins on him." Li Zihe's face turned as gloomy as the sky. He glanced around coldly, feeling countless greedy eyes. Li Zihe opened his raincoat and pulled out a gleaming black automatic rifle from inside. It was the Sharp Arrow 5, one of the most sophisticated small arms produced by the Blooddusk family's small arms company. It was powerful, accurate, and expensive, making it out of reach for the average person. The greedy eyes instantly disappeared, leaving only a few who still secretly watched him. Li Zihe fired without hesitation. The high kinetic energy armor-piercing rounds tore through the dense rain and mist, exploding into a dazzling display of blood. The rain continued to fall, but the surroundings were silent. Li Zihe's random bursts of fire hit their targets, leaving those who coveted him feeling the threat of death. The child with a special sense of smell was also stunned, staring blankly at Li Zihe with a bewildered expression, looking extremely pitiful. Bang! Li Zihe casually shot him dead, making him pay the price for his sins. The Virgin Mary only loves pure children. Children tainted by sin should only seek the favor of the devil. Chapter 27 3 Masters. Li Zihe killed several people in quick succession, yet he didn't attract the attention of the management. The security situation in the outer districts is like this. Unless it involves a vampire from the inner district or a few prominent figures from the outer districts, the rest is left to yourselves. The rain continued to fall, and Li Zhe waded through the puddles to Avenue A in District 14, following the signs into Alley A16. Upon entering the alley, Li Zhe knew it was a wholesale and retail market specializing in electronics. The shops on both sides of the alley were filled with a wide variety of electronics, reminiscent of the familiar Zhujiang Road. However, the merchandise was unremarkable, clearly low-end, practical goods. Li Zhe didn't bother entering the shops to inquire about the chips. As an amateur, groping around blindly was far less reliable than seeking help from someone like Master Luke. A few commissions were better than dealing with a pile of junk. People were watching the excitement on the street ahead. As Li Zhe approached, he noticed that several police officers from the Public Security Bureau were causing trouble inside the His Electronics store, which Master Luke had introduced him to. I don't care which master's outsider you are, the Outer City Police Department has the final say. Now let this girl come back with me to assist in the investigation, otherwise you will be identified as the culprit of the June 13th murder. Li Zhe stood outside the shop and looked inside. He saw a patrol captain pulling a woman in a blue skirt, while the shop owner was trying his best to protect her and say good things. Captain Peter, you are such a joke. My niece just came here from the wilderness. How could she be the culprit of a murder? Look at her thin arms. Does she look like she can kill someone? Captain Peter's two small eyes stared at the white arms of the woman in the blue skirt. He was about to burst into fire. With her white and pink skin and the smooth touch, she didn't look like a wilderness person at all. She was more attractive than the top star on Fengaiyu Street. Just because she has thin arms doesn't mean she can kill? What if she's a superpower? Red Rock City is in turmoil now. Who knows how many Federation spies have infiltrated the city? The Earl has said that anyone suspected should be apprehended and thoroughly interrogated. Damn it, if she's a superpower, will you enjoy it? She'll tear you to pieces in the middle of the night. The boss smiled and painfully stuffed a roll of bills into the woman's arms. Only then did the persistent Sergeant Peter release the woman's arms. I'm telling you, old the Iron Castle family is gone, and the Walker family has submitted to our Lord Earl. The entire Red Rock City is under our Red Castle's control. I'm in charge of District 14 by the Lord Earl's orders. For your future safety, you should know what to do, right? Sergeant Peter grabbed the boss's shoulder and gave the woman in the blue dress a threatening look. The boss smiled and saw Sergeant Peter off. He waited until he was out of sight before gritting his teeth and returning to the business, angrily admonishing the woman in the blue dress. Kelly, go change your clothes immediately. This dress is too flashy. If you get targeted by the real vampires in the inner city, no matter how much money you give them, it will be useless. If you fall into their hands, you will. Old E kept nagging the woman in the blue dress, but the woman in the blue dress rolled her eyes nonchalantly. Forget it, old E. How could a real vampire come to such a dirty place? But the next moment, her eyes were suddenly attracted by something, and she looked behind old E with sparkling eyes. Old E, if this kind of vampire wants to rob me, you'd better not give them money. Old E turned around and saw Li Zhe taking off his raincoat as he walked in, revealing a clean and refreshing handsome face. Before old E could even say hello, the woman named Kelly asked, "Hi. Are you a vampire?" Li Zhe put his raincoat aside and said indifferently, "I'm a human. Master Luke asked me to come. You broke the appointment today." "Oh, sir, you don't know. Someone from the Public Security Bureau just came to cause trouble, and we really can't leave. Please sit inside." Old E hurriedly led Li Zhe to the back of the store with a smile on his face, and glared at Kelly fiercely. After entering the back, Li Zhe was shocked to find that this was a front store and back factory model. A dozen people were busy around several machines, constantly producing industrial electronic products with unknown uses. Old E led Li Zhe to a warehouse, where he saw several machines that looked like machining centers, and two silent men. Part of the equipment you requested has just arrived. The rest will have to wait a few days, but we can start debugging now. These two are Xiu and Molun, both veterans who were brought in to debug the equipment according to your requirements. Veteran, Li Zhe looked at the two men. Molun was in his 20s, and Xiu was only about 30. They didn't look like veterans. This antique equipment may be simple, but debugging is very troublesome. We three are the best mechanics. A girl named Kaylee approached Li Zhe from behind, introducing herself as one of the debuggers. He took 2 steps to the side and said calmly, "Can we try it out now?" Without a word, the 2 men turned around and began to power it on and debug it, their movements very skillful. This was a carbon-based wafer processing equipment, much smaller than Li Zihe had imagined and not too complicated to operate. The so-called complex debugging took only half an hour. But more than an hour later, Li Zihe saw the finished carbon-based wafer, as if in a dream, with a diameter of 500 millimeters. Li Zihe took the carbon-based wafer, feeling its heaviness in his hand, and said calmly, "How long will it take to get the complete equipment ready?" The man, about 30 years old, said, "At least 3 days. During this time, we can ship the equipment to your workshop and make all the necessary preparations for production, rent a workshop nearby and move all the equipment there. This is the rental fee. I'll come inspect the goods in 3 days." Li Zihe stuffed the carbon-based wafer into his backpack, leaving behind a thick wad of cash, and walked away. "Oh, you're leaving so soon? We still have a lot to discuss." Kelly followed Li Zihe from behind, but he coldly stopped her. "I don't like girls who wear heavy makeup." Kelly stopped in her tracks, watching Li Zihe disappear into the rain, her mouth gaping in shock. She had never met a man who wasn't attracted to her, let alone one who would berate her so bluntly. Kelly seemed to have a sudden thought, and suddenly turned around to see Morin with a gloating smile on his face. "What are you laughing at? Is it funny?" Morin asked back indifferently. "Isn't it funny? You always tease other people's feelings, and now you have tasted the feeling of being ignored." Corey's blue skirt suddenly moved without wind, and Morin immediately bent his body slightly, as if facing a great enemy. The oldest Xiu walked over, blocked the 2 of them, and said coldly, "Stop making trouble, do what you should do." Then he looked at Corey again and said in a good voice, "Can you change your clothes?" Corey stared at Xiu for 2 seconds, and said hatefully, "What clothes do I wear? Does it matter to you? As for others, I don't care about them." Xiu slowly turned around and walked away silently. Corey spat. "You are a coward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 28 Factions. Li Zihe wandered aimlessly through the outer city, clad in a raincoat, and before he knew it, night had fallen. He turned and headed for District 14. The inscription of Concealment trembled slightly, and his frail figure faded into the darkness, like a ghost walking in the night. The outer city was different from the inner city. Inner city night marked the beginning of the Vampire Society's day, ablaze with lights and music. In the outer city, however, night was the time of sin. Most residents shut their doors and windows, leaving only a few to enjoy this nighttime hunting ground. Hiding on the rooftop of an old building, Li Zihe watched the darkened his electronics store, waiting to confirm his suspicions. When he saw a dark figure lightly descend from the store onto the street, he knew his daytime perception had been correct. Xiu, Molun, and Kaylee were no mere debugging technicians, but 3 psychics. Li Zihe leaped through the gaps between the tall buildings, quietly moving across the rooftops. Even in the hazy rain, he kept a firm eye on the figure on the street below. There is no warmth in this world. Whoever tries to harm him will be met with Li Zihe's coldest and most brutal blow. The shadow quickly arrived outside a building, hiding in a corner and observing inside. Li Zihe looked at the large police station emblem on the building and immediately deduced the shadow's identity and intentions. The woman in the blue dress, Corey, had been bullied by Inspector Peter during the day and came to the police station at night. The lights in the police station were bright, and there was constant laughter and occasional women's screams, which made people imagine all sorts of things. Many administrative agencies in Hongyan City imitate the vampire's lifestyle, enjoying life late at night to show off their status as direct descendants of the vampires and widen the class gap between themselves and ordinary people. At this time, Inspector Peter would never have thought that his actions during the day had brought him a fatal disaster. Judging from Corey's agility, Li Zihe judged that her strength should have reached E level, which is the level of a blood knight. A police station has dozens of ordinary patrolmen. If there weren't any superpowered individuals, it wouldn't be too difficult for Kelly to kill them all. Li Zihe didn't intend to stop Kelly's murder. Although Peter was one of Mu Yu's men, Li Zihe believed that one more or one less of such a subordinate wouldn't matter. But just because he didn't intend to stop her didn't mean others wouldn't. Just as Kelly was about to leap over the high-voltage power grid of the police station, another dark figure approached, startling the woman, already filled with murderous intent. Li Ziyi watched from above as the two of them sat in silence for 3 full minutes. Finally, Kelly kicked the other in anger and turned back to his electronics store. Interesting. Haha, Li Ziyi's murderous intent dissipated. The gate between the inner and outer cities had been closed for the night, and crossing the high-voltage power grid in the heavy rain was still somewhat dangerous, so Li Ziyi decided to spend the night in the outer city. On a rooftop, he opened the Kaneo station app, listed the carbon-based wafers he had just acquired on Teobeo, and sent a message to HW. It was sold in less than a minute. He then retrieved a set of tents from the station and camped on the rainy rooftop. Those who don't sleep at night are bats. Although Li Ziyi had inexplicably possessed the power and heritage of the vampire race, he preferred to follow the human routine, finding it more comfortable to be active during the day and sleep at night. He Liangfeng's eyes were almost blurry as he stared at the Teobeo store page. When he spotted new stock, he quickly bought Li Ziyi's item and started shouting at the top of his lungs. They've got new stock. This was the only time He Liangfeng could show his usefulness. After being confined to the lab to analyze carbon-based chips, he had been assigned to the online shopping team, working in 2 shifts around the clock to update Li Ziyi's Teobeo store. He Liangfeng's shouting had a powerful effect, sending everyone in the lab into a frenzy of excitement. What's new this time? Chips or equipment? The lab's director, Dr. Xia, immediately swooped over to inquire about He Liangfeng's purchase. They left us a message saying it's a carbon-based wafer, and we need to test its quality to determine if it meets our expectations. Carbon-based wafer? Great. It's only been a few days, and it looks like they're already debugging their equipment. Dr. Xia immediately grasped the truth and was overjoyed. Since acquiring 2 more carbon-based chips, HW's research center has become a focal point for Yan Nation chip research. Leaders from various disciplines are constantly joining in to study these unidentified chips and basibans, with exciting new discoveries occurring daily. As the head of the research center, Dr. Xia has become a leading figure in this major scientific discovery, his reputation and status skyrocketing. Dr. Xia, I discovered something else. What is it? It seems that we are not the only ones buying each other's things. The day before yesterday, I found art paintings and art coins for sale in the store, but starting from yesterday, they were suddenly all bought out. I don't know if it has anything to do with us. Dr. Xia immediately became nervous. While calling the old man on the phone, he ordered He Liangfeng, from now on, no matter what is for sale in the store, we must buy it all. We must not let important clues fall into the hands of others. Yes, I guarantee to complete the task. He Liangfeng also cheered up. Now there are more and more people in the research center, and many technical masters want to get involved. He feels that his position of working on the computer in 2 shifts has been snatched away by someone else. Hangzhou, Villa, Studio. The young girl put down her paintbrush angrily, looked at the painting in front of her and sighed, a hint of melancholy rising on her brow. On the wall directly opposite her, there were 6 oil paintings of different colors, and she was copying one of them. However, judging from her expression, it was obvious that the copying was not going well. Knock, knock, knock. A beautiful woman knocked on the door and walked up, and asked softly, "What's wrong, Xiaowan? Haven't they replied to you yet?" "Yes, Mom. It seems that they don't think highly of you as the deputy director of Hubei Academy of Fine Arts." The beautiful woman smiled gently and said, "You are an artist. It's normal to be proud of your talent. Besides, I have the capital to be proud. Yesterday I showed the painting of distant mountains to Dinzhou. You can't imagine how shocked he was at that time. He should be shocked. This is a brand new way of painting." The girl nodded at first, and suddenly remembered something. She turned to look at her mother and said, "Where's the painting of distant mountains? Did you get it back?" The beautiful woman smiled. "Dinzhou kept it for research. I promised him to give him another painting of forest at dusk." "Don't even think about it," Xiaowan said angrily. "I just asked you to take it to someone to find out which school of work it is and who painted it. I didn't ask you to give it to anyone. Go and get it back for me tomorrow. If not, go today." The beautiful woman sighed and said, "Xiaowan, you will go to college next year. Dinzhou hasn't accepted disciples for many years. If you can become his disciple, I won't be anyone's disciple," Xiaowan said flatly. If Grandpa hadn't let me go to college and asked me to respect my predecessors, I wouldn't bother with them." The beautiful woman's face became serious. "Xiaowan, no matter how talented you are, you can't ignore those famous painters. There is no shortage of geniuses in the world, but 9 out of 10 geniuses will die young. Look at these paintings you bought. They can obviously be called masterpieces handed down from generation to generation, but why are they only sold for 15,000 per piece? And they are sold on Taobao, and they can't even enter famous galleries." The beautiful woman pointed to the 6 paintings on the wall and said, "If this kind of painting was named after me, it would cost at least 1 million per piece. If it was from the hands of Dean Zhou, it would be at least tens of millions of dollars." Art, seemingly otherworldly, is actually more focused on worldly factions. Your grandfather's arrangement for you to attend the academy indicates his high hopes for you. You must learn to accept the various rules of the world and ultimately rise to the top. The beautiful woman spoke to the girl, but she didn't see the understanding she hoped for on her face. She quietly left, intending to buy another painting from Taobao's shop and give it to Dean Zhou to pave the way for his stubborn daughter. However, when she opened Taobao, she found that Li Ziyi's shop was completely empty, not even a hair left. Chapter 29, Bloody River. Xiaowan. Historians believe that the main cause of the fall of civilization in the previous era was war, but I believe the fundamental cause was actually the complete division of class rule. Li Ziyi. After all, tens of thousands of years have passed. Could it be that the natural environment at that time has undergone a sudden change, such as human genetic distortion becoming uncontrollable? After all, genetically distorted groups like vampires and demons existed during the previous era of civilization. Xiaowan. Then what do you think is the root cause of genetic distortion? In the inner city of Hongyan City, in Master Luke's antique shop, Li Ziyi and his apprentice Xiaowan were discussing the topic of the fall of civilization in the previous era. These discussions had become frequent in recent days, and Li Ziyi and Xiaowan had become increasingly speculative. The most obvious manifestation of this was the increasingly fine tea that Xiaowan served to Li Ziyi, so much so that even Master Luke often stopped by to have a cup. Li Ziyi, could it be because of the super energy particles? Those who can withstand super energy particles become superpowered, and those who can't become deformed. In the end, the deformed people exceed the limit of human proportions. Xiaowan was silent for a moment, then smiled and warned Li Ziyi, "Your idea is very dangerous. A long time ago, those who had ideas like yours were burned to death by the temple." Li Ziyi asked, "What about now? Did the temple retreat to the God Star and no longer rule the Federation?" "It's the same now. The Federal Supervisory Department, the Scarlet Council, and the Abyss royal family will not tolerate the growth of such thoughts, because whether it is the temple, the Blood Clan or the Demon Clan, the top of the ruling class are all superpowered. They all claim that the source of their power is the noblest and purest, and they will absolutely not tolerate the slightest evil slander." Federal Supervisory Department? Don't they only target federal officials and alien spies? Do they also monitor the thoughts and consciousness of civilians? The purpose of the Supervisory Department is equality and love for all. The doctrine of the temple is that God created the world and all beings are equal. Have you ever considered that there is a subtle relationship between them? Li Ziyi was stunned for a moment, finally unable to resist cursing. "Is the one you brewed truly an apprentice at an antique shop?" Xiaowan took a sip from his teacup and replied calmly, "Then is the one you brewed truly a wealthy traveler?" A light rain fell, dripping from the eaves onto the stone slabs of the street, making a pattering sound. The faint aroma of tea wafted through the antique shop. 2 young men of roughly the same age sipped their tea while chatting away, discussing topics completely unrelated to their level. It was like 2 street shoe repairmen discussing the executive changes at Adidas and Nike. Woo woo woo. Suddenly, a horn blared outside the antique shop, its long, drawn-out melody enveloping the entire city of Hongyan. Li Ziyi set down his teacup and walked to the window, watching as more and more people appeared on the once empty street. None of them held umbrellas, letting the rain soak them, their faces gazing at the sky with excitement. "War?" Li Ziyi frowned. "No, this isn't a call to arms," Xiaowan said, also walking to the window and gazing up at the gloomy sky. "The only thing that could make the vampires willingly get wet in the rain is the arrival of a high-ranking vampire noble." "Huh?" Li Ziyi understood the reason. Everything was happening faster than he'd expected. The wide streets were packed with people. Not only were the vampires eagerly waiting, but even their vassal servants and slaves filled most of the streets. seemingly even more excited than the lavishly dressed vampires. After a long moment, Li Zhe suddenly looked up and saw a massive interstellar battleship emerging from the dense rain clouds and descending at breakneck speed towards the Red Castle Manor. This was Li Zhe's first time seeing a large starship. The ship, over a kilometer long, was displayed before his eyes in its true form, leaving him with a profound awe and shock he had never experienced before. Jiaming suddenly said, "Aren't you going out to greet them?" Li Zhe retorted, "Why should I? Don't get me into trouble, you two. Go out and stand." Master Luke emerged from the back workshop, glaring at the two men, then pushed open the antique shop door and walked out onto the street. Li Zhe and Jiaming exchanged a smile, then walked out together and stood on the street, blending in with the others. "What kind of noble are you talking about? A marquis, even a prince is none of my business," Jiaming asked seriously. "Are you really not a vampire?" Li Zhe replied firmly, "I said I'm human." As the large starship activated its anti-gravity devices and cushioned its landing at Red Castle Manor, the crowd on the street erupted in thunderous cheers. Li Zhe's communication bracelet also vibrated with a message. Ethan was calling him over. When Li Zhe returned to Red Castle Manor, all the vampires had gathered in the main hall of the castle. Count Dacre of the Red Castle family was waiting for him at the entrance. Before Dacre could say anything, Li Zhe coldly asked, "Was it Earl Muayu or Viscount Ethan who asked me to come back?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Liz, it was Marcus Hughes who insisted on seeing you, and he had Ethan inform you." "And then what?" Dacre looked at Li Zhe in surprise. He was Muayu and Ethan's uncle, and had been a pillar of the Red Castle family before Muayu became Earl. He was deeply uncomfortable with Li Zhe's current cold attitude. However, the vampire social system was based on power, and Muayu had just solemnly warned Dacre about this. Even though he was furious, he dared not show it to Li Zhe. So he swallowed his anger and said to Li Zhe, "Muayu asked me to wait here for you. He said you didn't have to remove your mask or go in." Li Zhe walked into the hall. He was upset, but his months of experience as a scavenger had taught him to be patient. Many vampires stood in the hall, looking at the long table in the center in awe. Only 4 people sat at the long table, Muayu and Ethan on one side, and a middle-aged vampire and a young vampire on the other. All 4 wore formal vampire attire. Judging by the inscriptions on their attire, they were all direct descendants of the Blooddusk family, while the others, including Count Dacre, were merely collateral branches. Li Zhe observed the others, and they too were observing him. The moment he entered the hall, he felt a powerful consciousness sweep through him. This consciousness contained a powerful wave of power, seemingly threatening to stir the blood within him. However, Li Zhe's concealment rune flickered slightly, and all the power fluctuations were subtly dissipated. Li Zhe was displeased, but then Muayu sternly shouted, "Sir Hughes, don't you think you've gone too far?" The middle-aged vampire sitting at the table smiled, then averted his gaze from Li Zhe. He said calmly, "Is this the partner you chose?" A frail human, Muayu gritted his teeth and said, "He's my mechanic. If you do anything excessive again, I'll make you pay." "Price? What kind of price do you mean?" Marcus Hughes said with some disdain. But the next moment, he felt his heart pounding wildly. Muayu before him was clearly delicate and beautiful, but he felt as if he were witnessing a giant beast baring its fangs, a mortal threat. Not only Marcus Hughes, but even Li Zhe sensed Muayu's wrath. The rage, transmitted through their bloodline, surged and violent, like a tsunami, with waves hundreds of meters high, ready to crash onto the beach in an instant. Marcus Hughes was enraged, his blood surging. A powerful aura emanated from him, pressing back against Muayu. The 2 invisible waves of power instantly collided, causing the blood in both men to vibrate and tremble. A long river of blood appeared before their eyes, 2 tiny stars shimmering faintly within it, reflecting a shimmering light. Plop. Plop. Numerous vampires collapsed to the ground in the hall, bleeding from their mouths and noses and twitching all over. Even in the excruciating pain, they fought to suppress their cries. This was a clash of ancient bloodlines, a brutal repression of the vampire hierarchy. The nobility and baseness of bloodlines were vividly demonstrated in this moment. Ethan's eyes were clouded with a layer of red, and the rolling river loomed in his mind. "So, I'm qualified to peer into the blood river," seeing the vampires around him staggering, and the young vampire across the table appearing calm, his sleeves trembling slightly. Ethan suppressed his inner excitement and quietly lay on the table, pretending to twitch. After a long time, The blood river disappeared. Marcus Hughes nodded slowly. Your awakened bloodline is indeed extraordinary. I recognize your qualifications to join the Blood Council. Oh, every vampire in the hall was shocked. Although Yu claimed to have awakened her true name, it was only at this moment that she finally received the recognition of the Twilight Continent. Chapter 30, Bewitched. Marcus Hughes openly acknowledged Yu's real name, effectively apologizing for spying on Li Zhe. Yu's ferocious aura slowly receded, but she didn't immediately reconcile with Marcus Hughes. Instead, she turned to Li Zhe and said, "Would you like to come sit down?" The dozens of vampires in the hall, struggling to find their balance, nearly fell over. How powerful was Yu now? What kind of status did she hold? Could just anyone sit at that table? They couldn't fathom what charm this masked mechanic possessed that could seduce the Earl so completely. But Li Zhe sensed Yu's inner uneasiness and self-blame. "No, I still have a mech to repair. Lord Hughes wanted to see me, and now he's here. If there's nothing else, I'll leave." Li Zhe didn't sit next to Yu. He understood that Yu was using this drastic approach to ask for forgiveness from his father for Ethan's reckless behavior. However, Li Zhe had no intention of causing trouble just to save his reputation. This was a crucial moment for Yu's return to the Twilight Continent, and it was difficult to offend the Twilight Continent's envoys. He could distinguish between the important and the unimportant. Li Zhe left the hall with a carefree manner, shocking the surrounding vampires. Marcus Hughes had insisted on seeing this mechanic just moments before, but now he casually let him go. Furthermore, a mechanic actually declined an invitation to dinner with Marcus and the Earl. What a noble honor. Ethan curled his lips. He had long known about Li Zhe's bad temper and his sisters doting on him. The young vampire sitting with Marcus Hughes looked at Li Zhe's back with a complicated look. Silence fell in the hall, and Marcus Hughes suddenly said, "Everyone out." Ethan glanced at his sister, confused as to why Marcus Hughes had ordered everyone out. But Yu nodded gently, and he left the hall with the rest of the Red Castle family. After everyone left, Marcus Hughes produced a foot-long rectangular box, pushed it to the center of the table, and motioned for Yu to open it. Yu, too, was struck by the golden thorn flower in the center of the box. She seemed to have seen this golden thorn flower pattern once before in her grandfather's study, though she didn't know its exact meaning. However, she clearly remembered her grandfather's expression as he looked upon it, one filled with deep reverence and nostalgia. "Open it. Let the ancestors see the purity of your bloodline." Yu opened the box, revealing two exquisite knives. Their dark gold handles and thin blades were adorned with the golden thorn patterns that seemed to grow from the blades, making them look less like knives and more like thorny thorn flowers. Yu reached out and picked up one of the knives. It felt warm to the touch, unlike the coldness of ordinary metal. She swung the knife, and the blade swiftly and silently cut through the air. Suddenly, a suction force emerged from the handles, drawing a trace of Yu's blood. Another knife in the box hummed, as if in joy, yet also as if in a resentful question about why Yu hadn't chosen it. Marcus Hughes's face paled, his gaze filled with a complex mix of emotions. Shock, envy, and jealousy. Li Zhe left the hall and had his servant prepare a carriage, taking him through the rain to the Red Castle family's mecha base, where a mecha awaited repair. In this technologically advanced age, the vampire's estate still preserved the ancient ecosystem of horses, carriages, and castles, a paradox common among the vampire ruling class. Adhering to ancient traditions while embracing advanced technology, they established one of the most powerful factions in the universe with a far smaller population than the Federation. Li Zhe entered the mecha hangar and immediately began repairing a bloodhammer mecha. It was he who had personally pierced the cockpit canopy of this mecha, severing the remains of Earl Wilf. Later, he asked Yu for the mecha, intending to use it as his own training mecha after repairing it, fulfilling his dream of piloting a mecha. Yu had just gotten Li Zhe a new cockpit cover yesterday, and Li Zhe was busy with a carbon-based chip, so the bloodhammer had been left unrepaired. But now he had to fix it. Although he didn't understand why Marcus Hughes insisted on asking him, Li Zhe instinctively sensed danger. He had to prepare for the worst-case scenario. With a powerful bloodhammer at hand, he could handle any situation. Li Zhe manipulated the mechanical arm to replace the new transparent cockpit cover, then opened the engine's armored shield and, using the partial knowledge he had just awakened, adjusted several important settings. Li Zhe, are you really here to repair a mecha? Ethan walked in from outside, still looking nonchalant. Li Ziyi ignored Ethan and manually started the engine for the final adjustments. The high-energy engine burst into life and stopped as Li Ziyi controlled it, creating a rhythmic and beautiful sound. Ethan jumped onto the repair workbench and rubbed against Li Ziyi for a long time but got no response. Finally, he couldn't help but said irritably, "My sister looked at me as if she wanted to kill me, and now you are looking at me like an enemy. What did I do wrong?" Li Ziyi silently completed the final engine debugging, closed the armored protective shell, and jumped off the workbench. Ethan, fuming from behind, shouted, "Hey! Watch your attitude. Be aware of your status. I'm warning you. My sister is about to enter the Red Council to reclaim my father's honor. Your arrogance will bring her disaster." Li Ziyi gathered his tools and coldly demanded, "Does your sister dislike my arrogance? My sister tolerates you, but I don't. Does your sister have the final say in this family, or do you? Who enters the Red Council, your sister or you? Do you think you're nobler than me? Smarter than your sister?" Li Ziyi stared at Ethan and spoke word by word. "Who do you think you are?" Ethan's eyes turned red, his nostrils flared as he breathed heavily, even his fingernails elongated. This was a sign of a vampire's rage and boiling blood. Before Ethan could reach boiling blood, Li Ziyi raised his hand and punched him in the eye socket. Ethan fell headfirst to the ground, then swiftly climbed to his feet and lunged at Li Ziyi without a word. It's undeniable that Ethan's fighting prowess has been steadily improving. He's now considerably stronger than he was a few days ago, but this also fueled the small flames of anger within Li Ziyi. "Your father healed you, and you're turning your back on me? You deserve a beating." Figures flew through the mecha hangar as Li Ziyi and Ethan exchanged countless blows in a flash. The sound of punches hitting flesh was endless, and Ethan became Li Ziyi's ultimate target. This time, Li Ziyi didn't hold back at all, sparing only his ruthless killing techniques and avoiding hitting Ethan's vitals. Even so, Li Ziyi still managed to pin Ethan down. However, Ethan's blood was already boiling, and his aroused vampire body was incredibly resilient. The frantic youngster seemed oblivious to the pain, battling Li Ziyi with all his might, even baring his fangs. Li Ziyi repeatedly scored technical knockouts on Ethan, but the boy stubbornly pressed forward to fight again, finally irritating Li Ziyi. He grabbed Ethan's sweeping thigh, using the momentum to swing him up and over his head, slamming him to the ground like a sledgehammer. A faint crack of bone could be heard. Li Ziyi bent his knees and pressed them against Ethan's abdomen, pushing his intestines directly onto his lungs. He held his collarbone with one hand, just as Yu had locked him in place. "What are you doing?" The fierce Ethan suddenly became fearful, flailing his hands to tear at Li Ziyi, trying to free himself from this awkward position. Li Ziyi punched him in the heart, instantly rendering him powerless to resist. "What am I doing? Today I'll teach you the lesson of our ancestors," Li Ziyi said sullenly. "Listen, the rain is crashing outside, so cheerfully, it's raining, hitting a child? I've got nothing to do anyway." Li Ziyi wanted to slap Ethan twice to vent his anger, but suddenly realized the boy was crying. "I haven't hit you yet. Why are you crying?" Li Ziyi felt even more angry. His cowardly son was truly annoying. Ethan gritted his teeth and cried, "Do you know what the meaning of your posture is?" Li Ziyi was stunned. He really didn't know. The first time Yu locked him, they were not yet blood-linked, so he couldn't sense Yu's emotional fluctuations at that time. During the second combat training, Li Ziyi closed the blood connection between them again, so he couldn't feel Yu's emotions either, so he really didn't know what it meant. "A crying man is not qualified to be a strong man," Li Ziyi said coldly, letting go of Ethan and turning to walk out of the mecha hangar. Ethan sat up only after Li Ziyi left the mecha hangar. The deep exhaustion after the boiling blood made him feel weak. The boy stared blankly at the hangar floor. Suddenly, a shadow appeared on the ground. Ethan looked up and saw it was his sister. Yu pulled Ethan up with some heartache, carefully examined his injuries, and then breathed a sigh of relief. "Sister, you can't indulge Li Ziyi anymore. He just used the shackles of love on me." "How could a human use the shackles of love?" Ethan recounted the events to Yu in detail, implying that there was something wrong with Li Ziyi and that he needed his sister to discipline him. But Yu's face changed, turning red and white, an unsightly sight. And Li Ziyi's performance today was terrible. "Marcus Hughes, on behalf of Yubeo, proposed the marriage alliance to you. If Li Zihe were a man, he should have stood up and protected you, instead of hiding out like a coward. Mu Yu suddenly stretched out her leg and kicked out, her long, straight leg striking Ethan's chest like lightning. Bang! Ethan's body flew up, flying over 10 meters before crashing into a solid wall. Cough cough. Ethan spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood, staring at his sister in horror. It seems Li Zihe didn't hit you hard enough just now. Mu Yu disappeared from the spot, and the next moment she appeared in front of Ethan, punching him in the stomach. Sister, I was wrong. Bang! What was wrong? Isn't it enough that I recognize Li Zihe as your partner? Bang bang bang. The screams in the mecha warehouse continued for half an hour. Chapter 31. You will bring me trouble. It was a sunny day. Li Zihe didn't hold an umbrella, but when he reached the gate leading to the outer city, he still wasn't asked for his pass, nor was his suitcase inspected. This time, the soldiers at the gate took notice of Li Zihe's clothes and face. His clothes were Mu Yu's own, of course, but his face was a gift from his parents, so it wasn't that Li Zihe didn't want to be low-key, it was simply that he didn't have the ability. But just as he passed the gate, his keen hearing caught the whispers of several soldiers behind him. Who knows whose male lover this is? Look at his clothes. We couldn't afford them with 2 years' salary, don't be jealous. If you looked like that, you could ride in a carriage. Li Zihe's face darkened, and he thought about learning how to make himself look ugly as soon as possible. After exiting the gate, Li Zihe saw the car that had come to pick him up, and Cole, posing against the car door, her bare face glaring up at the sky. Li Zihe opened the car door and got in, saying coldly, "Are your eyes inflamed? Or are they tired from all that nightlife? Yet, last night, more than a dozen men treated me to drinks, and I kept them all in bed." Kelly got behind the wheel, stepped on the accelerator, and drifted 90 degrees, venting her anger. Li Zihe sat in the back seat, letting Kelly swerve and twist the car around without moving an inch. Unable to fit the car into Alley A16 in District 14, Kelly went straight to the workshop rented by his trading company from the back street. As soon as the car entered, she found Inspector Peter standing inside the workshop, pointing at the newly arrived equipment with a furious look on his face. "Don't you know that this kind of wire iron etching equipment is contraband? Are you dissatisfied with our Hongbeo family? Or do you not take me, the inspector, seriously? Look at what you said. How dare we small businessmen be dissatisfied with the inspector? This kind of equipment is antique, and those prohibited regulations have been around for who knows how many years. Please be flexible." Old He, the boss of his trading company, smiled and wanted to stuff a large roll of banknotes into the pocket of Inspector Peter, but failed after several attempts. Captain Peter spotted the newly returned quarry and shoved Old He's arm aside, righteously declaring, "All right, Old He, I'm following orders this time. Immediately, have these 3 outsiders come with me, or you'll be charged with complicity." This, Old He, clutching a roll of bills, faltered. Suddenly, he spotted Li Zihe, who had just gotten out of the car, and, grasping at straws, he said, "Captain, this equipment is for the lords of the inner city. If you don't believe me, you can ask this gentleman." Captain Peter glanced at Li Zihe, his gaze also scanning his clothes, his arrogance softening slightly. "Sir, who do you work for?" Li Zihe gave Old He a cold look, then replied, "Baron Pamir." Li Zihe lived secluded in Red Castle Manor. He knew many vampires, but only a few could be named. Baron Pamir was one of them. Of course, Li Zihe could also claim to know Ethan and Mu Yu, but few would likely believe him. Baron Pamir was Viscount Ethan's personal butler, responsible for many businesses in both the inner and outer city districts, making the story more believable. Baron Pamir? How could you possibly know the Baron? Inspector Peter's pupils instinctively shrank, and he shuddered. Pamir's master was Viscount Ethan, Earl Mu Yu's younger brother, and currently the second most powerful figure in Hongyan City. He couldn't even kill a security inspector like him. A simple puff of air would make him disappear into thin air. I need to verify this. If it's truly connected to the Baron, I, the inspector, will offer a gift of apology. Inspector Peter said he needed to verify, but he walked away in shame. Boss, he looked at Li Zihe, rubbing his hands, his face twisted into pout. Oh, this lord, oh, he was already wondering whether he should contact Master Luke and have Li Zihe pay for the goods. Daring to cheat Baron Pamir, how could he ever get away with this? As for Kelly, Xiu, and Molun, they all looked at Li Zihe with varying expressions. wariness, indifference, and delight. Kelly flirted again, saying in a coquettish voice, "Sir, you're from Red Castle Manor. Can you take me there to broaden my horizons?" Li Zhe replied indifferently, "Show me the equipment." "I'm pressed for time." The equipment debugging wasn't difficult, but with over a dozen sections of assembly line equipment, Kelly and the other two were overwhelmed. They demonstrated each section one by one until late at night before they finally produced several hundred finished chips. Li Zhe recorded the entire debugging process on his phone and confirmed that the taciturn Xiu, around 30 years old, was the leader of the three superpowers, while the aloof Molun was the technical expert. As for Kelly, who exuded a demonic aura, she was just a sideshow. Oldie said to Li Zhe attentively, "These chips are etched according to the Federation's third-generation universal architecture. If you require a more advanced architecture, we can provide subsequent technical services, free of charge." Li Zhe remained silent. He had no immediate plans to transfer this world's chip architecture technology to Langsing, as that would involve translations from various languages, something a layman like him couldn't handle. However, the wisdom of the Langsing people was boundless. Li Zhe gave them this equipment, along with operating videos. It wouldn't be long before they mastered it themselves, and he would also allow those elites to enjoy the joy of reverse engineering. The cost would be nothing more than a few hairs falling out. Seeing that all the equipment was functioning, Li Zhe took out his suitcase and opened it, revealing a bulge of cash. "This is the final payment for the equipment. Please count it. From now on, no one is allowed to enter this workshop without my permission." Xiu and the others, who were busy at work, were stunned. Kaylee ran over and asked Li Zhe, "Sir, we've just finished debugging. Don't you need workers to take over production? This kind of work is beyond the reach of ordinary people." Li Zhe pointed to the suitcase containing the money and said, "The federal currency in the suitcase is your wages. 20,000 yuan each." Li Zhe watched Xiu and the others, and his keen perception indeed caught a hint of disappointment in their expressions. But their disappointment was definitely not about the money. A senior technician's monthly salary was no more than 10,000 yuan. Li Zhe's 20,000 yuan compensation was not small, and they should be content. Xiu, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up, "Sir, can you tell us why you fired us?" "Why? Because the three of you are causing me trouble." Bang! The workshop door suddenly kicked open, and Inspector Peter and a group of people rushed in from outside. "I was wondering how you lowly people could possibly have anything to do with the noble Baron Pamir. You actually dared to deceive the people of the Red Castle family." Kelly, Xiu and the others looked at Li Zhe with complicated eyes, and all of them moved several meters away from Li Zhe. Li Zhe ignored the arrogant patrolman Peter and looked coldly at the two people behind him. One of them was Baron Pamir, and the other one Li Zhe could not name, but he had seen him in the Red Castle Hall that day. He was an earl from the Twilight Continent. Thanks to book friend TPD 123 for the reward. Thanks. Chapter 32 Handsome Guy, Run. "Arrest all these suspects," Captain Peter shouted with a powerful voice, and a dozen of his patrolmen charged towards Li Zhe and the others. "Wait." Baron Pamir approached Corey from behind, carefully examining her skin. He nodded with satisfaction, then grabbed her arm and dragged her to another vampire. But the vampire smiled, pointing at Li Zhe and saying, "Take that one too." Pamir looked at Li Zhe and said, "Lord House, this man dared to defraud people under the name of the Red Keep. I need to bring him back for interrogation." Lord House smiled and said, "I'll torture that woman along with him. You can interrogate him on the side." Baron Pamir was stunned for a moment, then walked over to Li Zhe, took a look at his face, and his eyes suddenly lit up. "Lord House, you have good judgment." The two vampire men smiled knowingly. But they ignored Li Zhe, who lowered his head, and ignored the murderous intent that flickered in his eyes. Yes, Li Zhe was ready to kill. When Earl House entered, he glanced briefly at Corey before turning his gaze to Li Zhe. That disgusting, lustful look stirred Li Zhe's fury, and he nearly tore her apart. Baron Pamir sneered, "You're truly audacious, using the Red Castle family's name to commit fraud." Li Zhe stared at Pamir in silence, his eyes lowered to conceal his murderous intent. Under the threat of over a dozen guns, Li Zhe and the others were escorted from the workshop and into two separate vehicles. Li Zhe and Corey boarded a luxury car with Baron Pamir and Earl House, while Xiu and the others were escorted to a police station truck. Once in the vehicle, the two vampires' eyes were unconcealed, their unbridled lust like flames, threatening to consume Li Zihe and Corey to ashes. Li Zihe suddenly asked, "Doesn't the Red Castle Manor have a carriage? Why didn't you get one?" Baron Pamir narrowed his eyes, his face sullen, and remained silent. Li Zihe continued, "If I'm not mistaken, you accompanied Lord House to the outer city without Viscount Ethan's consent." Baron Pamir finally spoke sinisterly, "You know a lot. You must tell me all your secrets later." Li Zihe fell silent, looking at Baron Pamir as if he were a dead man. He couldn't understand why Marcus Hughes of the Twilight Continent, despite his always low profile and caution, insisted on seeing him. Now he seemed to understand the reason. The convoy split in two, the police truck leaving the group, while Li Zihe's luxury car quickly drove out of District 14 and into District 1, near the inner city walls. District 1 was the upper echelon of the outer city, where most of the wealthy lived. The residences were not cramped, 100-meter-high buildings, but rather single-family villas. The streets in the villa area were narrow, and as they passed a T-junction, the driver instinctively eased off the accelerator to slow down. At that moment, Li Zihe suddenly felt a strange dizziness, as if a strange wave of power had hypnotized him. A flash of realization struck him, and he looked at Corey, who sat obediently beside him. She was a psychic. The dizziness was brief, a mere moment, but the car, which had been slowing down, suddenly surged forward. Li Zihe watched as the driver, his expression dazed, floored the accelerator and crashed into the inner city wall directly ahead. Baron Pamir, also in the car, looked dazed. Count House was much better, but he had barely recovered from his dizziness. He thrust his pale hand into Corey's neck. "Run." But Corey was prepared. The car door had already opened, and her petite body was already rolling out, pulling Li Zihe with her, asking him to escape with her. However, Li Zihe was behind Corey, and when House's hand thrust forward, he became her shield. Kelly reacted quickly, kicking Li Zihe with her legs and rolling out of the car, but Li Zihe remained inside. Bang! The limousine crashed into the city wall, and the driver's body flew out of the front windshield. Li Zihe's body was also launched into the air by inertia, just avoiding the enraged Count House and flying close to Count Pamir. Bang! Li Zihe collided with the driver again, sliding to the ground along the city wall. He saw Kelly running a long way away, shouting as she ran, "Handsome, run, bitch!" Count House jumped out of the car and rushed to catch up and strangle Kelly, but another strange power surge appeared, and Kelly's feet went weak, and his body paused. This time, Kelly had even less time to recover. He ripped off a car door and threw it at Kelly's back. But just as the door was about to slip, Kelly fell to the ground and rolled rapidly to the other side of the limousine. Puff, 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 da-da-da, da-da-da. The limousine was instantly riddled with bullet holes, and then the sound of intense gunfire echoed from the darkness. Two mobile suits appeared at the other end of the street, their 2-meter-tall mechanical structures providing immense power, supporting the continuous firing of their extremely recoil-thumping miniature machine guns. It was Xiu and Morin who had broken free from Captain Peter's control and acquired 2 mobile suits. "Cover me, I'll rescue Corey." Xiu stopped firing and sprinted in his mobile suit. Morin began firing intermittent bursts, deftly dodging Xiu's flight and maintaining control of the limousine. The large-caliber armor-piercing rounds were incredibly powerful. Even a vampire viscount would be injured by a few rounds. Morin's intention was to pin Count House behind the bulletproof car, giving Xiu a chance to rescue him. Despite her best efforts to dodge, Corey was still struck by the car door thrown by Count House. Fortunately, Count House was busy dodging the machine gun, so the force was greatly reduced, so it was not fatal. Xiu easily ran to Corey's side, picked up her petite body with one hand, turned and rushed into the side road. Morin, shooting and moving, quickly followed Xiu away from the battlefield. "That boy is still by the car. Shouldn't we save him?" Corey spat out blood from her chest, staring at the limousine that had already begun to burn in the distance, feeling a pang of resentment. "I can't care about that. That House is at least a viscount. He's dead." Xiu suddenly accelerated, the joint engine of the construct suit whistling sharply, the overclocked power allowing him to carry the weight of 2 people and still escape at high speed. Corey was silent. Although the boy was handsome, He Xiu and Moran were her close friends and relatives. She couldn't let them fall into danger again. But what Xiu and the others didn't know was that, except for the injured Baron Pamir, the other two people in the limousine had long disappeared. Just before Kelly shouted handsome, "Run!" Li Zhe had already quietly slipped away along the inner city wall. Then, a dense hail of bullets from the minigun covered the limousine. Countess, who was rolling on the ground, didn't even notice when Li Zhe disappeared. When he Xiu ran over to rescue him and Morn opened fire to suppress him, Countess's figure passed through the hail of bullets and mysteriously disappeared into the darkness. Thanks to the Buck friends hang to 1234 for the reward, thank you. Brother. Chapter 33. Are you ready to enjoy? He Xiu and Moran piloted their two mobile suits at high speed for 2 blocks, only slowing down when their energy depletion alarm sounded. The mobile suits were lightweight, individual auxiliary constructs. Their lightweight frames couldn't support high-energy engines, and the micro-engines weren't strong enough to sustain their top speeds, so they needed to draw down the energy stored in their accumulators. Experienced warriors wouldn't exhaust all their stored energy, they always kept some aside for emergencies. He Xiu placed Kelly on his shoulders and, while the micro-engines recharged, said solemnly, "Kelly, sense if that vampire is pursuing us." Kelly closed her eyes, her curly black hair flowing freely in the night sky. 3 o'clock on the right, Kelly suddenly opened her eyes and pointed fearfully at a tall building to the right. A blurry black shadow was silently falling from the wall. If Kelly hadn't called out, it would have landed on top of the 3 of them without them even noticing. Da-da-da, 2 miniguns opened fire instantly, their crisscrossing chains of fire sweeping across the sky like fireworks, capturing the hazy black figure. However, the mobile suit's reaction speed was far inferior to the shadows. Using the tall building's outer wall as cover, the figure quickly escaped He Xiu and Moran's lock-on, instantly disappearing from their sight. He Xiu whispered, "Moran, take Corey and leave first, didn't you hear? I told you two to go first." But Moran and Corey ignored He Xiu's command. Instead, they huddled together with him, forming a triangle outward, creating a 360-degree defense. He Xiu gritted his teeth and shouted, "Moran, I told you to take Corey and leave first, Captain, you can't escape. That will only make it easier for him to kill us. He's not a vampire viscount, he's an earl." He fell silent. By now, he had fully understood that Lord House was an earl. An earl would not easily abandon his prey. At any moment, he could burst out of the darkness and tear the 3 of them to pieces. Huddling together could indeed protect against surprise attacks, but a minigun blast sent the city's security forces tumbling into the sky. Would the 3 of them be dead by then? Corey kept her eyes closed, her long hair swaying like a snake, but blood was already streaming from her nostrils. Wu-A motorcycle suddenly barreled toward them from the darkness, whistling at breakneck speed. Neither Morna nor He Xiu fired at the motorcycle. The 3 of them moved in unison, aiming their guns at the darkness in that direction. "Watch your left," Corey shouted urgently, and He Xiu saw a dark figure charging from the left. He Xiu spun hastily, but his construct armor's turning speed was limited, and he could only watch as Countess slammed into him like the wind. Bang! He Xiu's breastplate dented, the immense force instantly fracturing his sternum and sending blood gushing out of his mouth. Moran turned hastily, but Countess had cunningly dodged in front of He Xiu, giving him no chance to fire. With a snarl in his face, Countess swung his fists, repeatedly striking He Xiu, blasting every joint engine in his mobile suit. This was the vampire count, his body as tough as steel. Even a lightly armored mobile suit couldn't withstand his blows. Coley threw her head back and screamed, blood gushing from her ears, nostrils, and eyes. A powerful mental shock enveloped the entire area. But Countess was prepared. Despite the powerful mental shock, his stun was short-lived. Coley opened her eyes and, taking advantage of the moment, slapped He Xiu's mobile suit. Crack, crack, crack. He Xiu's mobile suit shattered to the ground, no longer protecting him. But he had also successfully freed himself from the mechanical constraints and regained his mobility. Countess and He Xiu shook off their daze almost simultaneously lunging at each other, who were within arm's reach. He Xiu, enduring the excruciating pain, clung tightly to Lord House's waist, shouting, "Shoot me!" Moran, barely recovering from his dizziness, instinctively obeyed, raising his gun towards He Xiu and Lord House. At a range of less than 10 meters, the large-caliber rotary machine gun possessed terrifying penetrating power. If Moran opened fire, he could instantly pierce both the Xiu and Lord House with dozens of armor-piercing rounds. No, Corey's horrified scream jolted Moran awake, causing him to withdraw his trigger finger. The trio lost their fleeting opportunity. Lord House delivered a powerful blow to Xiu's chest, separating them completely. He then kicked Xiu towards Moran and dove back into the dark alley behind him. Corey quickly embraced the bloodied Xiu and sought medicine from the scattered components on the ground to give him emergency treatment. It's incredible. A bunch of little bugs from the inspection department can actually make me feel embarrassed. You all must die. Especially that woman. I'll make sure she's thoroughly annihilated. Count House's sinister voice echoed from the darkness, like a vengeful demon crawling out of hell, about to devour the three of them, flesh and blood. Moran, holding his minigun, swept across the dark alley, but couldn't find a target. Drops of sweat fell from his forehead, running down his lips, turning into deep bitterness. The three of them were an elite team from the Federal Inspection Department, with tacit tactical coordination and a balanced professional team. They had defeated countless powerful opponents. But now, facing this vampire count, they were completely powerless. In the face of such an absolute disparity in power, any tactics were futile. And now that Xiu had fallen, they had no chance of even dying together. Count House gazed grimly at Xiu and the others from the darkness, his gaze fixed on Coley. He grinned and said, "It's said that psychics can add a lot of extra spice to lovemaking. Are you ready to enjoy it?" Puff. The sound of a sharp weapon piercing flesh suddenly echoed behind Earl House, surprising him immensely. How could there be someone behind me? Puff puff puff. The deep sense of danger in his blood terrified Earl House. He turned abruptly to look behind him, but his movements were extremely slow. Only then did he realize that his lower back was numb and unable to move. There really was someone behind Earl House. A thin figure stood more than 10 meters away, casually wielding a knife. Puff. Earl House heard the sound of a sharp weapon piercing flesh again from behind. This time, he understood completely. His kidney had been stabbed. Ouch! Earl House roared, his blood boiling, entering a state of boiling blood. Ah! Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Hot blood spurted out violently from the wound on his lower back, and the intense pain made Earl House roar continuously. The blood washed away his waist and restored sensation. Li Zhe frowned, and gently waved the knife in his right hand. Another knife flew back silently from the darkness and landed in his left hand. He controlled the pair of mysterious knives and stabbed Earl House 5 times in a row, but surprisingly only caused him to bleed, without injuring his waist and kidneys. Now that Earl House had entered a state of boiling blood, his flesh had become even more resilient. It seemed unrealistic to expect to hunt him down quietly. Are you ready to enjoy it? The smell of hot blood made Li Zhe tremble all over. The 3 combat inscriptions in his body were already trembling slightly, hungry and thirsty. Chapter 34, Secret Fragrance. Count House roared in anger. Xiu and Kaylee, who were standing on the street, were first terrified, then relieved. Kaylee held Xiu tightly in her arms, clutching a high-explosive bomb with its safety removed. If she released her fingers, she would share eternal sleep with the silent, taciturn man in her arms. Moran also activated the self-destruct mechanism on his construct armor. A violent impact would send everything within several meters skywards. They knew the vampire count's combat prowess. Since they couldn't escape tonight, they would die gloriously. The 3 of them waited silently on the long street, staring resolutely into the darkness before them, awaiting their final moment. But after a long time, Count House didn't rush out. Damn it! Is he torturing us with this kind of oppression? Moran cursed through gritted teeth, raising his miniature machine gun to empty its ammunition belt. Ah! A furious roar echoed from the distant darkness. You despicable coward, come out! Morn and Corey exchanged glances. They could recognize Lord House's voice, but he was already a long way off. Corey reacted quickly, hoisting Xiu onto her shoulders and sprinting in the other direction. Morn quickly deactivated the self-destruct device and backed away, keeping watch behind Corey. He glanced off into the distance, puzzled, wondering who the coward was. A small knife danced in Li Zhe's hand like a playful husky. Another knife glided silently through the darkness, closing in on the furious Lord House. This pair of knives was a mysterious gift from the Zumu family to Muayu. Named Angxiang, One blade is the dark blade and the other is the fragrant blade. They possess a mysterious connection, like twins, each able to sense the other. When Li Zihe first laid eyes on the knives, he felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if they were long-lost personal belongings that had returned to his grasp. Like Muayu's large double-barreled hunting rifle, Spring, the two knives seemed to possess a life of their own. In Muayu's hands, the knives only vibrated and hummed, but in Li Zihe's, they could influence each other's movements within a radius of more than 10 meters. Furthermore, they were invisible and silent, like a faint, subtle fragrance that could be sniffed out before one could react. Just now, Li Zihe had used these knives to insidiously stab Count House's body with a series of wounds. Li Zihe had unknowingly closed in on Earl House, within a dozen meters of him. The dark blade hidden in midair had already sliced through the skin of his back. However, the vampire's senses were too sharp, and the numbing effect of the dark blade was greatly reduced, allowing Earl House to react almost instantly. In the darkness, Earl House suddenly turned and lunged behind him. Li Zihe also lunged forward. He had 3 clear attack paths in his field of vision, any of which could inflict fatal damage on Earl House. However, based on his previous encounters, Li Zihe knew these were all deliberate flaws left by Earl House. Choosing any of these paths would lead him into a close-quarters fight, forcing him into a bloody exchange of wounds with Earl House. Earl House had a lot of health, and Li Zihe felt it was uneconomical. So, Li Zihe chose a more obscure attack path, moving sideways to the left. The fragrant blade in his right hand slashed towards Earl House's right ribs, while another dark blade hidden in the shadows simultaneously sliced towards Earl House's right carotid artery. The next moment, Count House's sense of danger spurred him to react instantly. He instinctively swung his right arm to block the right side of his neck, unexpectedly catching the incoming dark blade with his bare hands. However, his raised right arm left his right ribs wide open, and the blurry attack line in Li Zihe's vision suddenly became crystal clear. The kill inscription vibrated violently, and Li Zihe suddenly accelerated, his right fragrant blade accurately piercing Count House's right ribs. However, Li Zihe felt as if he had pierced polymer armor, and the attack was extremely clumsy and difficult. The dark fragrance blade was 6 inches long, and Li Zihe only penetrated 3 inches before quickly withdrawing it. Even then, Count House's left arm had already swept across, threatening to strike Li Zihe's head. The vampire count's body was too strong. Even with the dark fragrance blade's unmatched sharpness, Li Zihe lacked the strength to deliver a complete and fatal blow in such a short time. Li Zihe swung his left arm sharply to the right, just enough to catch Lord House's left arm. Using the momentum, he leaped forward, launching his right foot into the air and delivering a powerful kick to Lord House's lower abdomen. In a previous sneak attack, Li Zihe had stabbed Lord House deeply, but he was entangled in a fierce hold. Only after fracturing 2 ribs did he manage to break the distance between them. Lord House wasn't exhausted yet, and he didn't want to engage him in a desperate struggle. A hunter must learn to engage his prey at the most opportune moment. Li Zihe was in no rush, he wanted to watch Lord House slowly die, enjoying the thrill of the hunt. Indeed, despite the vast difference in their psychic power levels, Li Zihe intended to hunt Lord House. The moment Lord House gave Li Zihe a lustful look, Li Zihe had resolved to kill him. Ouch! Seeing Li Zihe strike and run attempt again, Earl House roared and lunged at him, like a prostitute confronting a broke client. He felt himself nearly driven mad by this cunning creature. The Dark Knight was always the vampire's home turf, their keen senses and uncanny ability to conceal themselves were ancestral hunting skills. But now, Earl House felt like he was the prey. The enemy could always silently approach within a dozen meters before being detected. If the enemy were a powerful vampire or a psychic, it would be fine, but after several rounds of confrontation, Earl House was certain that the enemy was only a Viscount or B rank, at least a significant rank lower than himself. However, the enemy's fighting skills were incredibly powerful. Aside from the first time he fell into his trap and was dealt a few heavy blows, he could barely detect any weakness. Seeing that Li Zihe was about to escape again, Earl House lunged with both hands like a hungry tiger, willing to catch Li Zihe even if his chest was wide open. At that moment, Li Zihe's right foot struck out, landing squarely on his lower abdomen. Bang! Earl House felt a sharp pain in his abdomen, his movements halted. Li Zihe gently clenched his right hand, and the fragrant blade trembled slightly, drawing a wisp of blood and energy from his body. Buzz, the other dark blade held by Earl House vibrated violently, slicing through the flesh of his palm, revealing pale bones. It flew away like a bird from a cage. Lineage also flew away, disappearing into the darkness, waiting for his next opportunity. You despicable insect. You're nothing more than a B-class esper, yet you dare to dream of hunting me? Haha, how ridiculous. Don't think you can kill me with a forbidden weapon. I'll find you now and chop you into pieces. Piece by piece, Earl House retreated to a corner, spouting harsh words, but his feet remained fixed. In the distance, sirens wailed shrilly. A massive manhunt in the outer city was about to begin. If he held out a little longer, Lineage, hiding in the shadows, would be surrounded by thousands, the roles of hunter and prey reversed. Seeing Count House retreat into a corner, Lineage suddenly smiled. While retreating into a corner protected him from sneak attacks from either side, it limited the vampire's agility, almost completely eliminating his lightning-fast dodging abilities. You made your own choice, don't blame me. Lineage retreated several dozen meters, pulled out his phone, opened the KNO Express app, and pulled something out of the delivery station. It was over 2 meters long, with 6 barrels, and a belt of large-caliber armor-piercing rounds dragged along the ground. A dense hail of bullets streaked across the night sky, reflecting the orange-red glow of death in Count House's terrified eyes. The title of this novel seems off-putting. Lao Feng wants to change it. Are there any experts with unique ideas who could offer some advice? Oh. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, Jackwalls and Dogs. Boom. Lineage's minigun had barely begun firing when Lord House rushed backward, his back and elbows hammering against the back wall like a pounding hammer. The solid corner of the wall collapsed completely, and a torrent of building debris fell over him. Lineage continued firing his entire 500-round belt into the narrow, collapsed structure. Lord House's body was pinned down by the collapsing wall, only his legs sticking out, curled up strangely. Lineage sheathed his machine gun, then stared at Lord House silently. His body remained motionless, blood pouring continuously from the rubble, quickly covering the ground for several meters. Bleeding kills humans, and vampires are no different from excessive blood loss. But Lineage didn't wait any longer. Instead, he grasped the dark fragrance knife and approached Lord House. He could sense that Lord House wasn't dead, but at most, he was just weakened. But the rich, bloody energy that permeated the air was incredibly alluring, constantly stirring the battle inscription within Lineage, giving his killing instinct a deeper understanding. Hunting isn't about scheming. A hunter constantly engaging in scheming will never become the strongest. A hardy, passionate encounter is an essential part of the process of growing in strength. More importantly, fresh prey yields the greatest rewards. Lineage approached Earl House. The plunder inscription vibrated violently, and the blood flowing on the ground began to float, forming a dense, bloody mist around him. The fresh blood in the mist condensed, its inferior impurities dissipating like wind, and the extracted essence was absorbed by Lineage. Boom! The broken bricks and tiles on the ground exploded, and Earl House, who had feigned death, suddenly sprang to his feet, his pale hands grasping Lineage's neck. The distance between the two was so close, and Count House, who had been preparing for a long time, was so ferocious that Lineage was like an elk caught in a trap, waiting for the fangs and claws of the beast. But Lineage also had claws, and this time he did not try to dodge, but instead swayed his body to the side and bent his elbow, colliding fiercely with Count House. Count House's arm was already straight, and he missed Lineage's shoulder by surprise, and his claws missed Lineage's back. Lineage's elbow hit Count House's chest, and the dark blade in his hand slashed towards his neck. Squeak House let out a strange cry, bared his fangs, and lowered his head to block Lineage's knife. Clang clang clang, a series of teeth-grinding sounds rang out, and the thin and sharp dark blade cut off one of Count House's fangs. A vampire's fangs are a vital part, second only to the heart and brain, and they are also the seed of their pride. Once broken, the physical pain and psychological trauma are immense. Puff! Lineage's hidden fragrant blade pierced Earl House's lower abdomen, the 6-inch blade piercing all the way to the hilt. Earl House chuckled in anger, his abdominal muscles tightening, firmly gripping Li Ziyi's knife. He clamped his hands around Li Ziyi's neck. The neck bones of humanoid animals are very fragile, a single twist would be game over. Any smart Li Ziyi would have immediately let go and stepped back. But Li Ziyi didn't. His left hand swung the dark blade straight into Earl House's temple, a suicidal tactic. Earl House had to throw his arm to block, but Li Ziyi's arm deftly shifted, and the dark blade carved a deep gash down Earl House's back. The intense pain ignited Earl House into a frenzy, and he engaged Li Ziyi like a madman. Li Ziyi, with one hand firmly grasping the fragrant blade lodged in Earl House's abdomen, connected the two men and engaged in fierce close combat. The desperate vampire Earl was terrifying, quickly leaving Li Ziyi's body covered in bloody scratches. But to Earl House's dismay, Li Ziyi's left-hand hidden blade always struck him where he needed to, forcing him to passively defend himself, his combat instincts strangely being manipulated by Li Ziyi. Furthermore, during several power clashes, Earl House suddenly realized that his strength was no longer overwhelming, as if he was losing ground. He was surprised, even though he had sustained some injuries, he shouldn't have weakened so quickly. Earl House, furious again, grasped Li Ziyi's knife with one hand, refusing to let go even as it sliced through his finger bones. With the other, he gripped Li Ziyi's shoulder, his sharp nails digging into his flesh, his blood-red eyes like a devouring demon. "Ah! Your blood tastes good. Let me absorb your, Earl House suddenly felt a hollowness in his abdomen, his boundless strength draining away in an instant. The fangs that had just bared their lips began to retract inward. This was a sign of the vampire's vitality fading. "You?" Earl House saw the mockery in Li Ziyi's eyes, then looked down at his abdomen, realizing that it had been numb throughout the intense battle, and blood had been gushing out like a fountain. "It's actually life-plundering. I should have known it earlier. You're a vampire. Only a powerful vampire could make me so miserable." Earl House felt the blood in his body begin to dry up. Strength drained from his arms and teeth, and he finally understood what had happened. Earl House collapsed in despair. His smooth skin quickly aged, turning from pale white to sallow yellow, and his entire body shrank. Li Ziyi also drew his dark blade. He'd held on to the hilt tightly just now because he'd activated a plunder inscription, unknowingly plundering the vital energy within Count House's body. The overflowing energy was rapidly absorbed by Li Ziyi, condensing under the control of the plunder inscription until it transformed into countless drops of pure energy and 3 pale golden droplets. The vampires from the Twilight continent were different. The droplets of refined energy were 3 times as abundant as those of a vampire count like Wilf. The pure energy seeped into every cell of Li Ziyi's body, and the tingling, intensifying sensation nearly made him moan in pleasure. The perilous and arduous hunt was all for the sake of savoring this final moment. The sound of aircraft engines echoed from the sky, and the next moment, a thick beam of light shot down from the sky, swiftly moving across the city block, searching for a suspicious target. Li Ziyi knew that Red Rock City's most elite city guards had been dispatched. The electromagnetic environment of this world is very chaotic, and ordinary people do not have the ability to operate drones. Li Ziyi looked around, turned around and disappeared into the darkness. He had been gone for only 2 minutes when several furtive figures came out of the surrounding buildings and began to clean up the battlefield with a clear division of labor. The bullet casings and bullets scattered on the ground, as well as the clothes and shoes on Count House, were all their spoils. In the end, 2 people dragged the naked Count House into the gutter and covered his body tightly with a bucket of garbage. It is estimated that it will not be long before rats and ants will have eaten away the body until there is not a hair left. There are also different levels of corpse picking, and the lower class people have the strongest ability to pick up corpses. Li Ziyi returned to the workshop rented by his trading company, shipped all the equipment one by one, and then opened the encrypted channel to connect with Yu. "I'm telling you, listen, just now, a jackal was targeting me, and then I discovered it was colluding with Ethan's dog. How could you be so careless, Father? Where are you? Are you okay?" Yu on the other end was clearly panicked, and it wasn't clear if she was worried about Li Ziyi's safety or his wrath. "I'll kill the jackal. Don't panic. Find out which other dog isn't loyal." Li Ziyi thought for a moment, then said coldly, "If you find any problems with Master Luke, don't touch him yet." "I understand, Father." Li Ziyi hung up the call with Yu. left the workshop, and walked into the dark alley. His brows suddenly furrowed. "You saved us, didn't you?" Kaylee, carrying the unconscious Xiu on her back, scrambled out of the darkness and stood in front of Li Zhe. Chapter 36 Bonfire in the Wilderness. "You saved us, didn't you?" "Sorry, I'm not that kind-hearted." Li Zhe looked at the bewildered Kelly coldly, and was about to leave, but Kelly moved to block his way again. The fragrant knife slipped into Li Zhe's hand. "What do you want? Haven't you caused me enough trouble?" Kelly forced a smile and said, "We're partners in crime now. Naturally, we should help each other." Li Zhe felt a faint mental wave trying to penetrate his mind. He knew it was Kelly trying to influence his consciousness, but the intensity of the mental wave was far inferior to that of a few moments ago, and it had no effect on Li Zhe. "Sorry, I can't help you." Li Zhe raised his leg to push Kelly away in disgust, but Kelly's steps were unsteady, and she almost fell. She had already suffered internal injuries from the continuous use of mental shocks, and after running for a long time carrying Xiu, her body was almost exhausted. Someone ran quickly in the distance. It was Morn, who was keeping watch in the dark. Moran reached out to take Xiu from Kelly's back, but Kelly flatly refused. Kelly gritted her teeth, straightened herself, and pleaded sincerely, "If you truly can't help us, thank you for saving us tonight. If you can, then since we share a common enemy, please save Xiu." Li Zhe suddenly pointed at the unconscious Xiu and said, "If you abandon him now, it shouldn't be difficult to escape." The city guards included true vampires, who were extremely sensitive to the scent of blood. Xiu, in his current state, was like fragrant bait, destined for their pursuit. With Kelly and Moron's psychic powers, they could have escaped if they had abandoned Xiu. Their current plight was arguably due to Xiu's burden. Kelly silently stared at Li Zhe, her pleading expression gradually fading into disdain and contempt. The dazzling beam of light from the drone was drawing closer, and the city guards were indeed searching for this location. "Sorry to bother you." Kelly turned and walked into the darkness. Her petite frame carrying the towering Xiu looked uncoordinated, but her steps were incredibly firm. Malin rushed ahead, paving the way for Kelly. Watching the two men resolutely retreat, Li Zhe once again saw in them that unwavering determination and perseverance. Kelly struggled to carry Xiu. Malin turned back several times, offering to take over, but she rudely refused. A psychic esper whose physical enhancements were agility, Kelly was far inferior to Malin in strength, but she refused to let go. Just as Malin tried to forcefully take Xiu, Kelly finally spoke. "Malin, I know you're hiding your strength. Xiu and I will die soon, but you, stay alive." Malin remained silent for a long time before turning and continuing to lead the way, searching for any narrow openings in the city guard's encirclement. But half an hour later, the two still stopped on a side street, no longer able to hide. Kelly put Xiu down, carefully wiped his face, and whispered to Molun, "Let's go. It'll be too late if we don't leave now." Instead, Molun began preparing for the final battle. The three of them prepared and waited in silence, like a wildfire in the wilderness, waiting for a torrential rain. From the darkness, Li Zhe emerged. "Tell me your true identities and your true motives, and then I'll consider whether to help you." Kelly suddenly looked up, her eyes struggling as she stared at Li Zhe. After a moment, she gritted her teeth and said, "I can tell you my identity and give you everything I have, but you can't even think about telling me about anyone else. Okay, now take off your clothes." Kelly's eyes blazed, but her hands moved without a second's hesitation. In a few seconds, she had shed her coat, revealing a delicate lace detail and pristine skin. Li Zhe pointed at Xiu and said playfully, "I mean, undress him." A few minutes later, a well-equipped search party of the city guard arrived at the alley, only to find a pile of blood-stained clothing on the ground. "Sir Haas, the suspect has changed his clothes. We'd like you to examine them." The city guard's lieutenant, not daring to disturb them, summoned a haughty man in a tuxedo. The man arrogantly approached the clothes, stirring them with his cane. A gentle inhale filled his nostrils with a pungent odor. "Achoo!" Sir Haas sneezed violently, his expression changing. He carefully lifted the clothes and brought them to his nose for another sniff. "Achoo! Achoo!" Sir Haas's eyes blurred. 2 seconds later, he pressed the clothes to his nose and inhaled deeply, with immense pleasure. "Achoo! Achoo!" After a series of sneezes, Sir Haas's nose was dripping with snot, But he didn't even bother to wipe it off, his face trembling slightly with ecstasy. The surrounding city guards were stunned. This vampire master usually paid the utmost attention to his appearance, meticulously washing even the slightest speck of dust from his face, yet now, his face, covered in tears and snot, was simply unbelievable. Rain began to fall, its cold water falling on Sir Haas's face, yet he remained completely oblivious. The cleansing rain would eliminate any odors in the air, making further pursuit more difficult. The soldiers of the city guard search team looked at each other, finally turning their gaze to their captain. "Wait," the lieutenant, a veteran of the vampire master's various antics, barked, quelling his men's commotion. Sir Haas was clearly in high spirits. Disturbing him now was a bad idea. Furthermore, the suspect they were tracking tonight was no pushover. Their colleague, Lao Wang's B-17 company, had been completely wiped out. Now that they had a rare opportunity to avoid the battle, only a fool would rush into pursuit. "What's going on?" Another search team, guided by a drone, followed, leading the way. Baron Pamir, the remarkably escapable Baron, was at the head. The lieutenant commander hurriedly bowed his head and pointed at Sir Haas, saying, "Your Excellency is tracking the enemy's scent." At Baron Pamir's voice, Sir Haas shuddered, instantly regaining consciousness. He dropped his blood-stained clothes to the ground, as if struck by an electric shock. Baron Pamir glared at Sir Haas with a sinister look. "Do you smell anything?" "Yes, my Lord Baron, I found another enemy, heading that way." Sir Haas reached out, only to find his keen olfactory memory had been wiped out. The intoxicating, pungent aroma had a magical power, completely obliterating the scent of the suspect he'd been chasing for so long. Li Zhe had already experimented with Ethan. A special mixture of pepper and chili powder not only arouses vampires but also temporarily disrupts their olfactory memory. Even Ethan, a direct descendant of the Blooddusk family, couldn't withstand the seasoning's power, let alone Sir Haas, a half-blooded collateral. Though Sir Haas was panicking, his expression remained calm. He extended his index finger and pointed to the right. The city guard search party immediately sprang into action, changing direction and pursuing the enemy. But they had barely advanced when they were stopped by a carriage. The carriage window opened, revealing Viscount Ethan, the young master of the Red Castle family. Ethan coldly declared, "Stop searching. All family knights, return to the manor." Baron Pamir hurriedly said, "But, Viscount, these enemies have committed serious crimes." Earl House. How did he end up in the outer city?" "Pamir, how did you get to know Earl House?" Seeing his young master's sinister expression, Pamir suddenly felt a surge of panic. The rain intensified, and the city guard search plunged the outer city into profound silence. A figure appeared silently, picked up a pile of blood-stained clothes on the ground with slender fingers, and sniffed it. "Achu interesting." Chapter 37 Yao. I'm a mid-level inspector in the 172nd Inspection Team of the Federal Inspection Bureau, number 9527 XXXXX. I have many names, but my friends call me Yao. I've come to Hongyan City to hunt down the Federation traitor Li Lining and investigate the assassination of the 302nd Infantry Division's Chief of Staff, in a high-rise apartment building in Block 8 of the outer city. Kali, Yao, explained her identity and her mission to Hongyan City to Li Zhe with a stiff expression. According to her, the assassination of Major General Rubak, Chief of Staff of the 302nd Mechanized Infantry Division, had triggered a chain reaction within the Third Army, exposing widespread corruption. Federal higher-ups were outraged, and Li Lining, the Third Army's logistics chief, implicated in human trafficking, fled in panic. Consequently, the inspection department dispatched the 172nd Inspection Team to thoroughly investigate the matter. Li Zhe scribbled furiously on a piece of paper as he coldly asked, "Anything else?" Yao shook her head and said, "Only he Xiu, the head of the inspection team, knows the rest of the secrets. I only know these." Li Zhe tossed the interrogation record in his hand to Yao. "Check if I've missed anything. Sign it and put your fingerprint on it." Yao's face remained blank as she signed and put her fingerprint on it without even glancing at it. By this point, she understood that this seemingly handsome young man in front of her didn't have such good intentions. The interrogation record might not seem particularly damaging, but if Li Zhe intended to use her, it could be a handle and a stain on an inspector from the inspection department. Li Zhe was about to put the interrogation record away when Mo Lun, who was guarding the window, came over, pressed down on the record, and quickly signed his name and put his fingerprint on it. I didn't ask you to sign it. Li Zhe found it quite amusing. Molan remained silent with a cold face, returning to the window to continue looking out. Li Zhe produced another sheet of paper and, in just a few seconds, sketched a portrait, handing it to Yao. Who is this person? What position does he hold in the supervisory department? Kelly glanced at him and shook her head. Master Luke isn't from our supervisory department. He simply bought some junk equipment from a channel affiliated with a supervisory department. Junk equipment? Does your supervisory department even have the responsibility to recycle trash? Li Zhe looked at Yao coldly, his meaning clear. If you lie to me, you'll die miserably. Yao replied frankly, the supervisory department doesn't recycle trash, but all excavations of civilization ruins within the Federation fall under its management. Many insignificant antiques, after analysis by the Research Institute, are discarded in the supervisory department's warehouse and placed on a scheduled destruction schedule. In addition, the supervisory department has various other tasks, including investigating interstellar smuggling and technology leaks. Seized low-value items are also stored and destroyed regularly. Li Zhe, expressionless, lowered his head and began to sketch on another sheet of paper, feeling a sense of fortuitous success. The complete set of carbon-based chip equipment was sent to HW, but as a Yan national, Li Zhe might not stop doing meaningful things in the future. Judging from tonight's performance, Mu has been targeted by too many people, so it's best to avoid her involvement in minor matters. Then, perhaps the cellar introduced by Master Luke is a suitable avenue. Scribbling on a piece of paper, Li Zhe casually asked, the supervisory department is responsible for upholding federal law and order, but you're selling public property from the warehouse privately. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Yao smiled. No, we paid for it. It's an internal benefit for the supervisors. Then, with your authority, what else can you sell? Yao paused for a moment before saying, what do you want to buy from us? First, compile a detailed list for me, including but not limited to the technological products of the civilization of the Zani Mei Shanglang era, as well as the essential technologies needed for interstellar colonization. Yao's face was filled with confusion. Even Moran, who was guarding the window, turned to glance at Li Zhe. Yao suddenly thought, did you hear some deceptive clue about undiscovered planets? And then you fantasize about building your own interstellar kingdom? The life of an interstellar farmer isn't that rosy. That's none of your business. Li Zhe ignored Yao's question and handed her another painting. Who is this person? The painting showed a young man sitting in a chair, reading a book. Although it was just a sketch, his gentle and peaceful temperament was vividly portrayed on the paper. Yao took a closer look and shook her head. Although your painting skills amaze me, I really don't know him. Li Zhe keenly perceived Kelly's expression, pupils, and emotional changes, but did not catch any signs of lying. Leave me a contact number. I'll contact you if I need business in the future. Yao wrote down a few email addresses on a piece of paper and said firmly, these are my personal contact information. I won't reveal any other contacts in the supervisory department to you. I'm not interested in your contacts. Don't contact me if you don't have anything to do in the future, or you'll bring trouble upon yourselves. Li Zhe took the address and stuffed it into his pocket without even glancing at it. He stood up and walked out the door of the apartment. After Li Zhe left, Yao couldn't help but ask Morin, who do you think he is? I don't know. You're saying he's not a vampire hunter? He's all mysterious and has all kinds of strange potions that are said to be able to restrain vampires. Morin shrugged and joked, turning back to look out the window, keeping a vigilant eye. A moment later he suddenly said, he used some ancient Kali language in the transcript just now. Hiss. Yao widened her eyes and said in disbelief, ancient Kali language? Did you read it right? Yes, it's true. Although it looks similar to the current Federal Common Language, there are several grammars that are very ancient Kali language. Yao was stunned and suddenly asked, Morin, you can actually understand ancient Kali language? Morin smiled and did not answer Yao. He just stared at the outer city area outside the window in a daze. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. Li Zhe walked in the silent Red Castle manor with an umbrella. He saw Ethan waiting at the door of his residence from a distance. Li Zhe put his umbrella in and entered the door. I didn't lock the door. Why are you waiting outside? Ethan followed behind and said with a gloomy face. I'm afraid there is something ulterior motive hidden in your house. Lineage stopped and looked back at Ethan and asked, "What? Then my sister will beat me, or even kill me." Lineage was angry. Although they were all his own children, their daughters were used for pain and had their own biased attributes, but their sons were used for beating. They were born to be angry. "It's raining today." Looking at Lineage's threatening look, Ethan straightened his back without hesitation and raised his chin, making him a stubborn and pubertal naughty child. "Put the child. Try it." 2 minutes later, the naughty child was nestled in the corner and rubbed his nose, bleeding silently. He once fought with all his might, but he couldn't break through Lineage's blockade and was beaten in the corner. Remember this from now on: when you don't have enough strength, excessive pride and stubbornness are foolish. Your sister has protected you for so many years, and you still expect her to protect you forever. Ethan wiped the blood from his nose and said coldly, "Earl House was attacked and disappeared in the outer city last night. The suspect has not been caught yet, but there is a person with obvious characteristics. It is said that he is more handsome than me. Who do you think he is? Do you suspect that I killed him?" "Tisk," Ethan sneered, "although you defeated me, it also made me certain of your strength. You are definitely no match for a pure-blood Earl. I really don't understand why my sister would kill a pure-blood Earl of the Blooddusk family for you." Lineage walked to Ethan's side, looked down at him and said, "Then why don't you ask your sister? I think she will give you a satisfactory explanation." "Yes," Ethan laughed at himself and said, "I asked my sister, but she actually showed a fierce murderous intent towards me. This is the first time since I can remember." Ethan stood up, passing Lineage on his way to the door. "It's my fault that Pamir colluded with Earl House. He deserves death, and I deserve the punishment, but who are those suspects? And who are you?" Ethan walked to the door, turned to Lineage, and said, "Lineage, remember this: if you ever do the same thing as Pamir, I will kill you. Also, those suspects are all dead, right? Don't cause any more trouble for my sister." Ethan's words stunned Lineage for a moment. He asked himself, had he caused trouble from you? Did Xiaowan and the others need to be silenced? Lineage had no obligation to save Xiaowan and the others, but the sincere love and friendship between her, Xiu, and Molun brought a touch of human warmth to Lineage. And the moment Xiaowan had escaped from Earl House's car, and her cry to Lineage, "Handsome guy, run," it even brought a small wave of emotion to his hardened heart. Lineage had been in this world for nearly half a year and was accustomed to witnessing the callousness and heartlessness between people. Lineage had originally thought that after 20 years of living on Langsing, the emotions he'd cultivated were no longer suited to this world, and that this world wasn't worthy of his approval. But last night, Xiaowan and the others softened his already hardened heart. "Please vote. Please vote. Please vote. Big guys, please vote. If you don't have any, just invest $1 in this book. It'll definitely pay off, and even a few cents oh. Chapter 38 Who is not worthy? In the guest house at Red Castle Manor, Marcus Hughes sat grimly on the sofa, listening to a report from one of his viscounts. "Your Excellency, we've just found Lord House's body. It's been badly eaten by rats and ants, so we can't identify the murderer. But I believe it was done by a vampire." The vampire viscount placed a large metal box in front of Marcus Hughes and instinctively stepped back to keep his distance. Marcus Hughes didn't move. A young vampire who had been standing behind him stepped forward and opened the box, revealing several lumps of disgusting, rotting flesh. "This is all that's left of Lord House. The rest is just bones." A stench wafted out, several times worse than the stench of a slum sewer. But the sumptuously dressed young vampire didn't show any disdain. He took out a small knife and carefully sifted through the rotten flesh in the box. After flipping the box twice, he said to the nearby vampire viscount, "Get out. Don't let the news about Earl House spread." The vampire viscount left, and Marcus Hughes asked solemnly, "What's wrong, Finn? Did you see anything?" The young vampire named Finn frowned and said, "I'm not sure, but I think the murderer is very powerful." "Huh?" Marcus Hughes was stunned for a moment, then leaned over to take a look at the rotten meat in the metal box. His expression suddenly changed. Finn reached out and picked up a little of the rotten meat and rubbed it. It turned into powder, just like rubbing plaster. His face was grim as he spoke. "Not a single trace of blood remains, and the flesh and blood tissue has practically solidified. Who in Red Rock City could pull off such a massive plunder? Could a powerful individual from another clan have infiltrated Red Rock City?" Hughes sat back on the sofa and said coldly, It's not impossible. Go find Miu now and try to get as close to her as you can under the guise of protecting her. Okay, Uncle Hughes, I was just about to discuss music with Her Excellency Miu. I'm really growing fond of her. Hughes nodded and said, go ahead, Finn. Once she returns to Twilight Continent, there won't be another opportunity like this. After Finn left, Marcus Hughes fell into deep thought. Life plundering is a vampire's innate skill. The stronger the vampire, the more ferocious and thorough their plundering. Could it be Miu? Impossible, Marcus Hughes asked himself, then began to doubt himself. He might not know about others, but he himself definitely couldn't achieve the level he was currently at. Miu was a hair's breadth away from him. After leaving the guest house at the Red Castle Manor, Finn went to the main castle where Miu and Ethan lived, but was told that both owners were away. After a moment's hesitation, he held up an umbrella and went to a secluded and quiet courtyard. Others only thought that the mechanic Lineage liked quietness, so the Earl arranged that secluded courtyard for him to live in. But Finn took great pains to find out a secret. Miu would go to that courtyard to sit for a while every day. When Finn learned of this secret, he was very angry. In his opinion, an outstanding woman like Miu should not be alone with a mechanic. He had been forbearing and looking for various opportunities to get close to Miu, hoping to impress that cold woman with his talent and elegance. But with the internal purge of the Red Castle family last night, Finn felt a crisis. Not only was his way to continue to obtain secrets cut off, but Miu also developed a rebellious mentality towards him. Then let me burst his dreams. Finn walked briskly through the rain, full of anticipation and confidence for his meeting with Lineage. He was a pure-blooded descendant of the wealthy Moon Castle family, while Lineage was just a lowly mechanic. He believed Lineage would make the wise choice. Either leave or die. Huh? When Finn saw the secluded courtyard from afar, he noticed a figure standing on the grass in front of it. It was Ethan. Ethan's exquisite dress was completely soaked, and the rain fell on him, streaming down his body in streams. The young master of the Red Castle looked worse than a drowned rat, but his waist remained straight, his chin held high, and his eyes remained stubborn. Finn walked over with an umbrella, shielding Ethan from the rain. But Ethan looked at him, took a few steps sideways, and stood in the rain again. What's wrong, Ethan? Don't come near me. My housekeeper died last night. It's all your fault, Moon Castle. Stay away from me from now on. Ethan's voice was so cold that it chilled Finn to the bone. Being intelligent and shrewd, he immediately guessed that Miu was furious at Moon Castle's unauthorized approach to other members of the Red Castle family. Even though Earl House was dead, her anger was still lingering. So, your sister's in there? Finn smiled and walked towards the courtyard. He heard Ethan say from behind, I advise you not to harass my sister anymore. She doesn't have much patience for you. Finn continued walking, chuckling softly. You're wrong, Ethan. A woman as outstanding as your sister isn't something any man can possess. That mechanic has no qualifications. Ethan glanced at Finn coldly and drooped his eyelids. He was already in a bad mood and didn't want to waste any more words. But Finn had only taken a few steps when he heard the sound of a piano emanating from the courtyard. The piano played a clear, ethereal sound, permeated with a cool, sweet aroma. What a captivating woman! Finn, knowing a person by their voice, naturally assumed it was Miu playing the piano, but the next moment, the sound of a cello interrupted, joining in a tacit accompaniment. Who is she playing with? Finn, a man of extraordinary artistic talent, was surprised. After only a brief listen, he was certain that this new performer was truly exceptional. Finn couldn't help but listen for a long time, a feeling of inferiority rising within him. If Miu, the pianist, possessed masterful skills, then the cellist behind her was a truly renowned master. Listening to Miu's piano was like hearing the sound of raindrops, a cool, elegant drop. But listening to the deep, soothing cello, with its lingering, winding, slow and rapid rhythms, was like savoring the unpredictable nature of life. Who's that? Is it the mechanic? Finn couldn't help but turn around and ask Ethan. Ethan simply gave him a cold look and ignored him. But Finn had already received a surprising answer. But something even more surprising was yet to come. As the music played softly, a miraculous phenomenon unfolded above the courtyard. Raindrops from the clouds, falling straight down, were strangely drawn by an invisible force above the courtyard, slowly changing their trajectory. Within a radius of several dozen meters, the sky swayed in rhythm with the music. This, Finn's mouth widened in astonishment. Ethan's eyes widened, his mouth open in bewilderment. After a long moment, the rain stopped, and so did the music, but the swirling rain in the sky remained. Suddenly, the raindrops in the sky trembled in unison. Buzz, a distant humming sound echoed, like a sigh from an ancient time, spreading out in all directions, conveying a solemn declaration. The raindrops in the sky dispersed in a dense mass, forming a hazy mist. Finn was shocked to discover that the campus before him had vanished from his perception. But the setting sun cast a golden light on the mysterious vortex of rain, reflecting a veritable multicolored radiance. Finn stared at the scene in shock, muttering involuntarily, "Sunset Rain, so this is the meaning of her true name." Chapter 39. Where's my real name? When Li Zhe plundered Earl Welf, he only obtained a single drop of pale golden liquid, but when he plundered Earl House, he received 3. The disparity between vampires is enormous. Li Zhe focused his consciousness on the kill inscription, intending to inject all 3 drops, but this time, he failed. The kill inscription absorbed only 1 golden droplet and then fed back several of Li Zhe's consciousnesses, indicating that the bloodline strength is insufficient and it can't absorb it. The other inscriptions vibrated violently, like a group of naughty children protesting their father. No favoritism. Li Zhe thought for a moment and injected 2 drops of pale golden liquid into the bloodline inscription and the concealment inscription respectively. At first, he didn't notice any changes, just a slightly faster increase in physical strength and slight changes in certain parts of his body. His reputation as the cold-faced school idol of number 13 middle school was more justified. But when Li Zhe was playing music with Mu Yu, he suddenly felt a flash of red before his eyes, and sensed a long, blood-red river stretching across the starry sky. Li Zhe's consciousness was like a free wind, blowing through the river, feeling its vastness and stirring up slight ripples. The river was as red as blood, with countless bright stars twinkling within it. Many of these stars gave Li Zhe a familiar feeling, but his instinct for vigilance kept him from approaching. However, when he saw a faintly twinkling small star, he sensed its close entanglement with him and heard her affectionate call. Li Zhe suddenly realized that this inconspicuous little star was Mu Yu. Li Zhe's consciousness leaned over. His own bloodline should be cherished and cared for. How could this be allowed to be stunted? The surging blood river resonated with his thoughts, stirring up turbulent waves and enveloping the inconspicuous little star. The bloody waters wiped away the filth on her body, washed away the shackles within her, and unleashed the ancient power hidden within her, lingering for a long time. After a long time, the duet had long ceased, but the surge of the blood-red river continued. Li Zhe closed his eyes, feeling the power that shook his soul, trying to find his own star. But in the end, he found nothing. Without fangs, is there no true name? When Li Zhe opened his eyes, Mu Yu was already kneeling on the ground. However, this time, it wasn't an apology like before, but a heartfelt thank you. "Father, thank you for allowing me to understand the true meaning of my true name. I will never forget your gift. I am willing to sacrifice everything I have for your wishes." Just now, through a series of coincidences, Mu Yu had seized the moment of opportunity, realizing the true meaning of the name Mu Yu and tapping into the deepest power of the vampire race. Although Mu Yu was still an earl, he could easily cross the threshold of marquisate and even glimpse the path to higher power. Li Zhe frowned and said, "Get up. Don't kneel so easily from now on, or someone will notice. You have many enemies watching you right now." Mu Yu didn't get up, but instead said sternly, "Don't worry, father. I will go and kill all those people in Yubao now to absolve them of their sins of offending you. Father, all you do all day is kill, kill, kill. Have you forgotten what I told you?" Li Zhe was furious. After dipping a drop of pale golden liquid into the bloodline inscription, he awakened many new bloodline memories. Among them was the method of bloodline plundering, which was more ancient, more brutal, and more bloody than the genetic plundering of the Federation. Unlike Mu Yu, he was a direct descendant of one of the 7 great families. If people knew he was a Tang monk's flesh, who knew how many demons would be attracted? Now he only had Mu Yu, a Sun Wukong under his command. Could he withstand it? Li Zhe escalated his tone and reprimanded Mu Yu, "As long as you haven't become a duke, you have no right to act so arrogantly. You must be low-key, and low-key again. Do you understand?" Li Zhe was actually saying this to himself. "Father, you were talking about a Marcus last time." Mu Yu couldn't help but remind Li Zhe. He had previously said that one should be low-key before becoming a Marcus, but now he changed it to before becoming a duke. Li Zhe took 2 steps and squatted in front of Mu Yu. He didn't speak immediately, but remained silent for several minutes. Mu Yu was obviously panicking. Her head bent even lower, revealing her straight back and swan-like neck. Suddenly, Li Zhe slapped her head. "Have you learned to talk back? Have you become too independent? Don't you remember what I said?" Mu Yu's nervous heart suddenly relaxed, and she felt inexplicably moved. "Get up and cook." Mu Yu quickly got up and slipped into the kitchen, pulling out various ingredients and began to mix them. Li Zhe sat on the sofa like a big boss and said in a bad mood, "Also, call that idiot outside in. He's already 100 or 200 years old and still makes people worry all day long. Let him stand outside. He needs to reflect deeply." Ethan was punished by Mu Yu to stand outside in the rain. Li Zhe thought that was enough, but he didn't expect that Mu Yu was much more cruel than himself. Li Zhe walked to the kitchen door and said lightly, "You scared him that day. Ethan once complained to me that you, his sister, wanted to kill him. There are too few people in his family, and siblings are flesh and blood. Can you really do it?" Mu Yu was stunned for a long time, stopped the work in her hands, and walked out silently. Finn stood on the grass, staring at the secluded courtyard after the rain in a daze, with the umbrella in his hand dropped on the ground. He was soaked by the rain but didn't know it. The courtyard door opened, and Mu Yu emerged gracefully, her red dress flaring like flames, startling Finn from his daze. "She's wearing the skirt? Is she inviting me in?" Finn stared at the dress in surprise. He knew Mu Yu rarely wore skirts, having only worn one once, at the banquet. He quickly ran a hand through his hair, a smile playing, a touch of gentlemanly grace restored. "Congratulations, Master Mu Yu." Mu Yu glanced at him, a mere nod as a greeting. Then, walking behind Finn, she grabbed Ethan, who was also dazed, and headed back to the courtyard. Finn stared at Mu Yu's back, his heart sank. He vaguely understood that the woman he admired had drifted away from him. Finn mustered his courage and asked, "Was that the mechanic you were playing with just now?" Mu Yu paused, slowly turning to look at Finn, a chilling expression on her pretty face. "If you dare to go after him, I'll massacre you." Moon Castle, feeling the powerful murderous intent of Mu Yu. Finn couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Ethan, held by Mu Yu, lowered his head to look at his toes, wondering what he was thinking. No one can stop the rise of the Red Castle family. Marcus Hughes had walked up behind Finn and patted him on the shoulder, whether to comfort him or himself. Finn nodded woodenly, a strong sense of resentment welling up in his heart. Once upon a time, he was also the recognized genius of the Blooddusk family, a rising star with a high probability of awakening his true name. Moreover, Moon Castle had 2 marquises in their prime, and a great-grandfather of the Duke level was buried in the family blood pool. Compared with the dwindling Red Castle family, he was far more noble. Even after confirming that Mu Yu had awakened her true name, Finn saw nothing wrong with pursuing her. Instead, he felt fortunate, feeling close to her. But now? He had witnessed a legendary true name with his own eyes. A chasm had opened between them, unbridgeable. If Mu Yu had merely awakened her true name, she would have had a chance at becoming a duke, qualified to join the Crimson Council and allow the Red Castle family to return to the Twilight Continent. But now that she had realized the true name, the Blood Twilight clan would have a new seat in its council chamber. The Red Castle would have entered the Twilight Continent's most prestigious aristocratic circles, leaving Moon Castle and Water Castle far behind. The true name is a gift only possessed by 2 prominent figures in the Blood Twilight clan. Both of them are now Blood Princes, pillars of the Blood Twilight clan. This clearly shows how promising Mu Yu's future is, and she will undoubtedly be sought after by countless talented families. Why is it that mechanic? How could he have surpassed me? Finn felt endless resentment in his heart, and his eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at the secluded courtyard. Thanks to the bug friend Yang Wang Bjerksiu for the reward. Chapter 40, Reputation is completely ruined. A small round table was occupied by 3 people, with 6 dishes and a soup. Li Zhe was already half full, and Mu Yu had silently eaten 2 plates of spicy beef, but Ethan was still keeping a cold face to show his stubbornness. Mu Yu's eyes flashed with fierceness several times, but Li Zhe suppressed it, otherwise Ethan would have broken several ribs by now. Li Zhe stopped eating and asked Ethan calmly, "Are you dissatisfied with me? Or with your sister?" Ethan lowered his head and said nothing. "You can be dissatisfied with me, after all, I have been in this family for a short time, but you cannot be dissatisfied with your sister. Li Zihe looked at the stubborn boy coldly. Ethan, how did Mu Yu treat you, his younger brother, when you were at your lowest point? Did he ever let you suffer any grievances? Ethan raised his head to look at Li Zihe, his nostrils flaring as he breathed heavily. I understand. You're not upset with your sister, but with me. Li Zihe wiped his hands and said, you've been loved by your sister since you were little, but now you suddenly realize she's become so cruel to you, and because I, an outsider, killed your housekeeper and even tried to kill you, you actually hate me, right? Yes, you're right, Ethan admitted, stiffening his neck. And you also think your sister killed Earl House for me, affecting the Red Castle family's plan to return to the Twilight Continent, right? Yes, Ethan acted very straightforward. Mu Yu was about to explode again, reaching out to drag Ethan out, but Li Zihe held her shoulders and made her sit back down. Don't hit Ethan because of me anymore. I don't want to be a negative factor that affects the unity of our family. Mu Yu was stunned for a moment, lowering her head and saying nothing. She naturally loved her brother, but it was precisely because of this that she respected and feared Li Zihe even more. Don't look at Mu Yu as awesome as she is now. Actually, the lives of her and her brother are in the hands of Father Li Zihe. She knows too well the horror of bloodline suppression. As long as Li Zihe has a thought, she and her brother's bloodline will burst and die on the spot. But Ethan was very surprised by Mu Yu's performance. It was the first time he saw his sister so submissive to another man. I'm full. Ethan immediately stood up and walked away angrily. He was afraid that if he didn't leave, he would lose control and challenge Li Zihe again. He couldn't beat either of the man and woman. If they got angry, he would definitely be the one in trouble. Ethan was just stunned, but he was not stupid. Father, Ethan doesn't mean any harm. I know. He's actually jealous and feels inferior. He's jealous that I've taken away his family status, and he feels inferior because he's too weak. He's afraid he will never catch up to you. Li Zihe smiled faintly. Perhaps you've been too harsh on Ethan these days. Boys need gentle care, too. Also, in a few days, I'll give you another drop of source blood. You can use it to strengthen Ethan's bloodline. Mu Yu's eyes widened, and she said with some fear, Father, you don't need this. Ethan's talent is already very good. It's only a matter of time before he awakens his true name. Li Zihe shook his head and said, if he doesn't awaken his true name this time, there's nothing I can do. Mu Yu felt a mixture of emotions. She sensed Li Zihe's emotions, which were a sign of care and concern for Ethan. Just as Ethan couldn't understand why Mu Yu was so accommodating to Li Zihe, Mu Yu couldn't understand why Li Zihe was so kind to Ethan. In vampire society, no superior would tolerate provocation from an inferior, not even by direct descendants. Any disrespect toward an elder would result in severe punishment. Anything else, if you're okay, go see Ethan. He's young, so be kind to him. Ding dong. Li Suwen heard the text message notification tone, and when she looked at her account, she found that she had received another 150,000 yuan. Although Li Zihe is very rich now, he did not give Li Suwen too much at one time, so as not to rouse her suspicion again. Dang 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 dang, there was a video invitation on the phone. After Li Suwen saw that it was the brave bastard brother, a smile of joy suddenly appeared on the corner of her mouth. But she did not answer the call immediately. Instead, she closed her mouth and nose and held her breath. After dozens of seconds, Li Suwen's face turned red, her eyes glared, and she looked like an angry calabash brother. The girl called back and started to rant the moment the call was connected. Li Zihe, you have become so capable, right? How dare you not contact me for so many days? I thought you were kidnapped by a foreign girl. Do you think that just sending me money on time will do? Do I need money? The old men in the nursing home also get paid every month. Why don't you say anything? Why don't you ask me if I have enough to eat these days? Are I warm? Li Zihe, you are so heartless. Li Zihe could not help but turn down the volume of the mobile phone speaker to the minimum to reduce the killing effect of his sister's cold and crisp sound waves. A minute later, the anger on Li Suwen's face subsided, and Li Zihe also smiled wryly and began to care about his sister. I'm sorry, Xiaowan. I've been a bit busy lately, running around all day. You don't know. The internet signal in this small Eastern European country is really bad. Many places only have 2G, not even 3G, no signal. Are they the worst countries in Eastern Europe? Li Xiaowan immediately stopped fussing and asked with some concern, so how's your life? What about your eating habits? I heard the security there is terrible. Is your job dangerous? The girl's rapid-fire questions touched Li Zhe's softest spot. Li Zhe was now extremely perceptive. How could he not discern Li Xiaowan's feigned anger and hidden worry? To avoid being pestered by his sister about the foreign horse, he had recently reduced the number of video calls with her. 2 consecutive times of logging on, sending money, and logging off had clearly caused Xiaowan anxiety and worry. I should pay more attention to Xiaowan in the future. She's in her rebellious prime. It would be disastrous if she ends up like Ethan. Li Zhe mentally made a decision to repent. But then a headache began to set in. Brother, did your girlfriend dump you? How do you know I was dumped? You're still making excuses. Your clothes are changed, your watch is gone, and why aren't you wearing makeup today? I told you those foreigners are unreliable. They even took off your clothes after breaking up. Foreigners only have sex, no love, no affection at all. Li Zhe was speechless. The last time he wore the clothes you prepared for him, Li Xiaowan said he was being kept by a foreigner. But this time, he finally managed to make himself look a little uglier. He just bought a normal outfit, and she was thinking he was dumped again. Don't dwell on this gossip, Li Zhe said, feigning anger. This is my work clothes. I contacted you as soon as I got back, and I don't have any foreigners. Then come on, let me see where you live, come on. Let me see if there's anyone hiding in your house. Li Zhe couldn't persuade him, so he just walked around the house with his phone. Anyway, the small building was very low-key, and Li Xiaowan couldn't see anything. Don't move. Open that closet. This is it. I told you not to move, this is my boss's closet. Have you had enough of this? Li Zhe felt guilty and angry. This closet, which took up an entire wall, was filled with handmade clothes that Yu had prepared for him, as well as rows of watches, ties, shoes, and so on. If Li Xiaowan saw this, wouldn't his reputation be completely ruined? Chapter 41 Priceless Treasure. Okay, I got it. I'll buy you some clothes and shoes for the new year later. I'm rich now, so I'll dress you up so you don't get jealous when you see me looking so handsome. No, I already have several new clothes. Alright, how can I not wear new clothes for the new year? Don't worry. At most, I'll pay off my debts before the new year. That's it. Hey, hang up. I'll buy them myself. Give me 10,000 yuan and I'll buy them myself. That's it. Li Zhe finally managed to get Li Xiaowan out of the way, and only after closing Watchet did he breathe a sigh of relief. He opened Taobao and clicked on the women's clothing category. He carefully selected several reasonably priced outfits suitable for a 17-year-old girl, then switched the delivery address and sent them to Jinjiang Royal Garden in Zhuangwu District, Linjiang. For the past year, due to the debt crisis, Li Zhe had always supported Li Xiaowan's simple lifestyle to avoid gossip from his creditors and relatives. The Li siblings weren't the kind of shameless deadbeats. Despite having a mountain of unpaid debts, they dressed swankily and lived a bourgeois lifestyle, willing to draw criticism to maintain their quality of life. Li Xiaowan never blamed Li Zhe for her life. She had a righteous worldview. Li Zhe also noticed that Taobao's store had over 99 notifications. Upon opening it, he first saw a long letter from HW. Dear owner, hello. 3 hours ago, we received a complete set of equipment. While your traceless shipping methods are shocking and puzzling, we express our sincere gratitude and hope we can maintain good contact. It was a thank you letter, and judging by the tone, it seemed to be dictated by the old man, whose words were filled with deep gratitude. Li Zhe was also pleased. Preliminary inspection seemed to indicate no major issues with the used equipment. However, he didn't reply. He didn't intend to contact HW again unless necessary. The stick had been given to you. Li Zhe didn't intend to worry about how to beat the dog. As for the question of whether the technology trees of the two worlds have the same origin, the answer will naturally be revealed after a period of time. There are messages from several other buyers in Taobao's store. After Li Zhe casually browsed through them, he couldn't help but feel angry and laughing. Brother, why don't you restock your antique gold coins? My father-in-law likes them very much. I promised to give him 100 as a betrothal gift. My wife is about to leave. You are harming people, brother. I have asked someone to authenticate the antique gold coins. Your business is not very serious. Hurry up and add me on QQ. Let's have a good chat. You haven't added me on QQ for so many days. I think you want to be sued. Okay, who made me kind-hearted? You list 2,000 for one. I will take them all. Lee Zhe blocked these villains while watching, giving them a good opportunity to be tools. They all thought they were smarter than monkeys, but in fact they were all rats. Now that Lee Zhe was well off, he naturally stopped selling imitation antique gold coins. Who would sell real gold as fake if they had no other choice? However, among all the buyers, there were some discerning buyers, and 2 of them had taken an interest in Lee Zhe's paintings. Buyer A, boss, do you have Mr. Muse's contact information? Buyer A, boss, could you please put me in touch with Mr. Muse? I'd like to learn painting techniques from him. Buyer A, boss, are you Mr. Muse? I'm Qin Xingxin. My paintings were published in the 6th issue of Yanguo Art Monthly this year. Could you give me some advice? I can pay the tuition. Buyer B, hello, boss, could you please inform Mr. Muse that Wang Yuru from Hume would like to discuss painting with him? Buyer B, boss, could you please contact Muse? I'd like to buy a painting of Sunset Forest urgently. Buyer B, boss, could you please tell Muse that Dean Zhou of Hume admires his paintings? Lee Zhe sensed their appreciation for his work from the messages from the 2 buyers. Wang Yuru, the pompous figure in particular, reassured Lee Zhe about the value of his paintings and brought a wave of heartache. Alice. Fame, that thing, is a value multiplier. Lee Zhe had been short on cash recently, selling many of his paintings for just 15,000 yuan. Even so, many people still complained he was overpriced. But Lee Zhe had bought masterpieces online for tens of thousands of yuan, and they were nothing compared to his own. Now, someone who knew what he was doing had finally come through. Lee Zhe put the remaining paintings up for sale, adjusted the prices, and logged off. He didn't intend to reply to any of the messages. Discussing painting techniques with me? How did you get here? Or is there a way I can get back? Wang Yuru had just returned to her office after class. She swiped open her phone and habitually glanced at a Taobao store, her eyes lighting up. Finally, new paintings are coming. Ever since Wang Yuru gave Dean Zhou a painting of distant mountains a few days ago, she'd been receiving calls from the old dean regularly, asking when Mr. Muse would come to HFA and if any new paintings had been sent. Wang Yuru sensed Dean Zhou's impatience and anxiety, and if it weren't for her powerful connections, he might have even scolded her. But Wang Yuru was helpless. Muse wouldn't even reply to her messages, so what could she do? She couldn't yet reveal that the paintings were purchased from Taobao Shop, a talented artist who pioneered a new style. She wanted to see if she could somehow get her hands on them. Wang Yuru was something of a figurehead in the art world. She examined the 4 new paintings, one of which was the custom-made Sunset Forest. There's a Sunset Forest, huh? I thought you were so aloof. Although the lighting and angle of this painting differed from the one in her daughter's studio, it was clearly a custom piece. Since this Muse accepts custom work, he's not some master painter, making him easy to manipulate. Wang Yuru reached out to place her order, but was stunned when she confirmed the transaction amount. Price increase, has he gone crazy? Only then did Wang Yuru realize that of the 4 new paintings, 3 were priced at 300,000 yuan. But only the Dusk Forest painting was priced at 1.5 million yuan. That was a 100-fold increase from its previous price. A cold face froze as she quickly opened the store's customer service and began typing away. Mr. Muse, I'm sure you didn't make a mistake in the price. So what's causing your arrogance? Please don't take Dean Zhou and I's appreciation as grounds for your arrogance. A true painter must first possess noble character. If you're a greedy, mean person, then I advise you to leave Yan country's art world. Wang Yuru's message, filled with righteous indignation, took on the tone of a superior, stern and threatening. After sending the message, Wang Yuru took a sip of water, feeling a little better. She thought this Muse was treacherous. She'd only given him a few compliments, but he'd actually used her and Dean Zhou's reputation as a token of appreciation to demand exorbitant prices. I must teach him a lesson. Wang Yuru slammed her water cup down on the table. A few minutes later, Wang Yuru didn't hear back from the store's customer service, but she suddenly noticed that 4 paintings had been removed from the shelves. HMPH. You're smart. Wang Yuru thought the painter, Muse, was afraid of her and had begun adjusting the prices. But she waited and waited, until the end of the day, and still the 4 paintings weren't back on the shelves. Did someone else find his paintings? What should I do? Wang Yuru felt a little annoyed. She wasn't short of money, and the paintings were, to be fair, of great artistic value. But she was being forced to bow down to nobody. Dream on. Thousands of miles away, He Liangfeng, without even glancing at the price, snapped up 4 of Li Ziyi's paintings with lightning speed. He shouted, "They've got something in stock. 4 paintings, give it to me, give it to 3 groups, screw you. You already have 1 painting. Can you handle the research? Our group has already made important discoveries, confirming the presence of an unknown element in the materials used in those paintings. We need ongoing research materials. The paintings must be given to us this time." Several unshaven researchers surrounded Dr. Xia, the head of the group, arguing fiercely. Thousands of miles away, Art Professor Wang Yuru could never have imagined that everything sold in this Teobeo shop was now considered priceless by some. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42. See you again. Early morning in Red Rock City. The vampires, having enjoyed a night of pleasure, were about to retire when they were startled by the shrill sound of an alarm. This time, it wasn't the arrival of some prominent vampire figure, but rather the alarm of war. Driving through the streets of the inner city, Li Ziyi felt a distinctly different, oppressive atmosphere. It had been a long time since Red Rock City had seen a large-scale war, and many merchants traveling between the Federation and the vampires had almost forgotten the subtle hostility between the two sides. Li Ziyi drove to the gate leading to the outer city and found that very few people were passing through, especially those from the outer city, who were being strictly inspected. "Show me your ID." Li Ziyi had intended to pass through with a facial recognition scan as usual, but this time he was asked to produce his ID and undergo an identity check. Red Rock City was the vampires' main industrial and commercial hub on Crimson Star, with a strict wartime management system. In normal times, it might appear corrupt and lax, but at this moment, no one dared to play with their lives. Li Ziyi took out his electronic ID card and swiped it across the sensor at the gate, making a beep. The next second, the guard in charge of the inspection suddenly changed his expression and stood at attention to salute Li Ziyi. "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't recognize you." Li Ziyi nodded slightly and went out of the gate on his own, but soon he heard whispers behind him. "Oh my god, I told you last time. This guy is a big shot, bah. You clearly said last time that he might be some big shot's male lover. Isn't that a big shot? Keep your voice down, you want to die." Knock knock knock. The knock on the door sounded neither fast nor slow, with just the right rhythm, so that the people in the room would not feel disturbed or uncomfortable. Kelly was feeding Xiu in the room. When she heard the knock on the door, she immediately became alert and closed her eyes to sense the danger around her. Moron, the guard, had already reached the door, peered through the peephole, and lowered his rifle behind him. "That's him." Kelly opened her eyes and nodded, motioning for Moron to open the door. She felt a little frustrated, as she couldn't sense any presence outside, as if the knock was from a formless, intangible ghost. Li Ziyi walked in. Kelly smiled and asked, "What's up, big shot? Any more business for us?" Li Ziyi shook his head and glanced at Xiu, who was sitting in the chair. Seeing that he needed to be fed, his brows furrowed slightly. Xiu's recovery was much slower than he'd expected. Li Ziyi said coldly, "Pack your things, I'll take you away." "Leaving now? Can't we wait 2 days? Have we been discovered?" Kelly asked, looking at Li Ziyi in surprise. "No, the war is about to begin, and it's inconvenient for you to stay here." After Li Ziyi finished speaking, he carefully observed Xiu and the other two, sensing any signs of change in their expressions. Moron's face was expressionless, while Corey's expression was gloomy and somewhat disappointed. However, the injured Xiu gave a sheepish smile. They were, after all, members of the Federal Inspectorate. Staying here with the war looming certainly raised suspicions of espionage. But they couldn't blame Li Ziyi. In such a chaotic situation, no one would take a risk. It was a good thing Li Ziyi hadn't killed them. Xiu struggled to stand. And Corey quickly supported him. "Although we're not on the same page, thank you so much." Xiu was frail, his voice lacking in strength, but Li Ziyi inexplicably sensed his sincerity. Corey asked Morin to bring Xiu a coat, and they helped him change. Then, together, they helped him down the stairs. After getting in the car, Li Zihe drove straight to the outer city walls. The atmosphere of war in the outer city was even more intense than in the inner city. City guard vehicles were parked at many intersections, and people were constantly being dragged out and shoved onto them. It was unclear whether they were spies or able-bodied men. The car felt a bit quiet, and Li Zihe suddenly asked, "Have you been in contact with anyone lately?" "No," Kelly shook her head. "We haven't been out yet. Xiu's injuries are too severe, and we don't want to cause trouble." Li Zihe tapped his fingers on the steering wheel a few times, but ultimately didn't change direction. When he entered Kelly's room earlier, his sense of smell was momentarily lost, and then a memory flashed through his mind. The fragrance-burning flower, colorless and odorless, was extremely rare and could erase any trace of odor, miraculously suppressing the vampire's sense of smell. But Li Zihe's sense of smell was exceptional, and he detected a hint of clear tea. The exits from the city were strictly controlled, but Li Zihe's electronic card was of a very high level, and he successfully escorted Kelly and the others out. Li Zihe tossed 3 backpacks to Morin, containing a full set of wilderness survival supplies. With their superpowered aura abilities, traversing the wilderness wouldn't be difficult. "Hey, we don't even know your name yet." Seeing Li Zihe about to leave, Kelly couldn't help but ask. "Call me Muzi." Li Zihe drove off in the car. Kelly leaned over and carried Xiu on her back, her petite body resolutely heading off into the wilderness. Xiu said helplessly, "Can't you just have Morin carry me?" Kelly remained silent. Morin pretended not to hear and ran off to scout ahead. "I'll write the report when we get back." "What the hell? They're cleaning up their own messes. The worst that can happen is we'll be demoted another level." After returning to the city, Li Zihe didn't go home. Instead, he went to Master Luke's antique shop. Due to the war alert, most of the shops on the street were closed, but Master Luke's was still half closed. Jiaming was still reading in a chair. A pot of tea was brewing on the table, with 2 teacups on it. But at his feet was a simple bag, clearly preparing to leave. Seeing Li Zihe come in, Jiaming smiled and poured him a cup of tea. "I thought you weren't coming." "How did you know I would come?" "I guessed." "Do you believe me?" The two of them had a strange conversation with each other, and then both laughed. Jiaming pushed the 2 books on the table to Li Zihe. "These 2 books are for you, maybe they will help you with your research direction." Li Zihe picked them up and flipped through them, then asked with a smile, "My research direction is antiques. These 2 books don't match yours." Jiaming finished his tea and smiled faintly. "I think you have been looking for the secret of the fire in the refuge of the last civilization." Li Zihe was really surprised. He didn't even explain this matter in detail to Yu, but Jiaming guessed it. "You guessed it? Do you even need to guess? When you were discussing the civilization of the previous era with me, you often casually broached this topic. Sometimes I wanted to tell you directly, but you kept beating around the bush. I've listed some secrets at the back of the 2 books. If you're capable, go find those secrets." Jiaming stood up, shouldered his bag, and left without even a simple goodbye. He was incredibly carefree. Li Zihe chased him out, hesitated for a moment, and called out, "How can I find you later?" Li Zihe actually wanted to ask if he was related to the supervisory department. But after arriving in this world, Li Zihe subconsciously avoided close contact with others. His most frequent interactions were with his chat buddy, who wasn't really a friend. "See you again," Jiaming waved, disappearing around the corner. Li Zihe was silent for a moment, then opened the book in his hand and flipped to the last page. Several information channels were clearly written in ancient Kali. Twilight Continent, Crimson Council, Twilight Library. Divine Superstar, Temple, Elders Library. Federation, Ministry of Supervision, Library Number 7. Chapter 43 Pain and Pleasure. Within 2 hours of the war alarm being sounded, several large and medium-sized starships from Red Rock City took off, freeing themselves from the Crimson Star's gravity. They reunited in space with starships from other cities, forming the Blood Clan's combined space fleet. In a major battle, no large starship dared to lower its altitude to enter the atmosphere. Doing so would negate most of its maneuverability. Whoever entered the atmosphere first would be tactically vulnerable to attack. Cheap space torpedoes could easily crush a starship. Starships were prohibitively expensive, so unless in a life-or-death battle, they were usually used merely as a deterrent. At most, They engaged in guerrilla warfare in outer space. The real action was between low-altitude fighters and ground forces. Fierce ground fighting had already broken out in Blackwater City, 1,200 miles from Red Rock City, but no Federation attacking forces had yet appeared near the city. In the dense forest west of Hongyan City, Li Ziyi, Mu Yu, and Ethan were feasting on spicy cumin venison skewers. Mu Yu, however, ate very little, spending most of his time serving the two foodies. This gave Ethan a long-lost sense of family warmth, but also irritated him with Li Ziyi's brash behavior. As they ate, Li Ziyi asked, "Are you sure the Federation will attack Hongyan City again?" "They'll probably notice you took the confidential document," Mu Yu affirmed. "Since the Federation army has made so many preparations, they won't easily change their battle plan. Otherwise, they won't be able to explain themselves to the Federation politicians. Plus, this coincides with a Federation election. To win the once-a-decade election, the Jingchuanli family, the Porter Starchester family, and the Nanjinkin family all need military successes to boost voter morale, and the recent Federation military deployments confirm my predictions about their war." It turned out that when Mu Yu assassinated General Rubak, Chief of Staff of the 302nd Infantry Division, he had looted his safe and obtained a seemingly ordinary piece of military intelligence. That military secret, seemingly a simple transfer of supplies, could be stored in a most secret safe, alongside General Rubak's personal belongings. This sparked suspicion and speculation in Mu Yu. With a keen military sense, Mu Yu analyzed the military intelligence foreshadowing of war and even speculated that Red Rock City would be the main battlefield. This was also the reason why Mu Yu did not immediately follow Marcus Hughes back to Twilight Continent after his arrival. If Mu Yu left Red Rock City and the Red Castle family foundation was destroyed by the Federation as soon as she left, it would be a significant blow to her reputation. From the expressions of Mu Yu and Ethan, Li Ziyi knew they were eager for the Federation army to arrive soon, to use their blood as a warning to those who despised the Red Castle family. Mu Yu patiently explained the Federation's strategic objectives to Li Ziyi, helping him understand them. However, this also left Ethan somewhat dissatisfied. He suddenly interrupted, "Li Ziyi, you're a pilot now. Please don't doubt my sister's strategic acumen, okay? Alright. I'm going to get some sleep. Call me if the enemy approaches." Li Ziyi stood up nonchalantly and headed deep into the dense forest, where his bloodhammer mech was located. Ethan watched him from behind and suddenly warned, "Keep your spirits up. Enemies and those who might be coming from your area, if you're in danger, immediately approach us." Li Ziyi waved his hand, indicating he understood, and quickened his pace to disappear into the distance. Today, Li Ziyi was no longer serving as a sidekick mechanic, but rather as a full-fledged pilot, responsible for covert reconnaissance in a key area. Crimson Star is located on the edge of a chaotic galaxy, resulting in a highly turbulent electromagnetic environment. Furthermore, due to the year-round rainy season, the sky is often thick with cloud, making long-range reconnaissance methods often ineffective. This creates excellent conditions for concealed assaults by ground mobile forces, and similarly, for ambushes by defending forces. Arriving at the lurking area, a group of mobile suits silently saluted Li Ziyi, their eyes filled with envy and respect. A pilot qualified to pilot a high-end mecha like the Bloodhammers was undoubtedly skilled. Li Ziyi casually returned the salute and quickly entered the cockpit of the Bloodhammer. The cockpit was slightly narrower than Mu Yu's Bloodblade, making it a bit cramped for two people to play games, but it was still fully equipped, practically a mini apartment. Li Ziyi pulled out a reclining massage chair, half lying on it and closing his eyes. But he wasn't dozing, he had entered a strange state. Ever since he sensed the blood-colored river, the slaughter inscription, which had already absorbed 2 drops of pale golden liquid, had undergone a surprising transformation. Whenever Li Ziyi focused his mind and engaged with the slaughter inscription, his consciousness would magically enter a slaughter secret realm, immersing him in a remarkably realistic virtual world. Li Ziyi appeared on a desolate red planet, surrounded by a swarm of insects. He was alone, with only a battered mech for company. What's today's training? StarCraft. Looking at the dense swarms of hydralisks and dragons around him, Li Ziyi couldn't help but feel nauseous. He had a mild case of trypophobia. Yet, the trembling in his body made him excited. It was a truly contradictory experience. A dragon swooped down from the sky first. Its red skin and pus-stained teeth made Li Ziyi even more nauseous, But he remained focused, carefully savoring the next experience. Li Zihe felt his arms swing, effortlessly and casually. The tattered mech's arms followed suit, its two swords wielding skillfully and slicing through the air, slicing and slicing through the dragons. In this process, Li Zihe was a spectator, a passive participant, not the controller. He could clearly sense the techniques and details of the battle, even the subtle vibrations of the insect debris crashing into the tattered mech. But he did not interfere with the shabby mech, much less with his own abilities. After several profound experiences, Li Zihe came up with two theories. Either this killing secret realm was a game-like training world created by integrating his existing knowledge. This meant Li Zihe was playing a game, and even a cheater, enjoying the experience of simply lying still. Or, these combat experiences were simply memories from deep within his mind. It was unknown which generation of ancestors had imprinted these real-life combat experiences into Li Zihe's genes, providing him with valuable combat experience. If the latter is the case, did my ancestors also encounter the Zerg from StarCraft? I'll ask you someday if there are Zerg in this world. These two questions popped into Li Zihe's mind, but they didn't stop the Li Zihe in the secret realm from moving. Li Zihe waved his hand, slaying all the flying dragons that swooped down from the sky, then leaped down and rushed towards a distant hill. From a distance, a dark hole appeared. A swarm of hydralisks frantically blocked Li Zihe's path, firing countless spikes at him. The squeaking sounds made his scalp tingle. But Li Zihe's battered mech was powerful. The alloy blades on his arms were incredibly sharp, and he slashed and slashed at the insects that flew towards him with a casual swing. Furthermore, Li Zihe repeatedly threw his longsword like a boomerang, spinning to slice off the wings of the insects in the air, and then flying back into the battered mech's grasp. This was a completely new experience for Li Zihe. The tide of insects bit at him, and every sight was filled with disgusting teeth and mouths. Calling it a brutal training exercise was just that. But with enemies everywhere, Li Zihe used superb skills and coordinated tactics to forge a slimy path. Within the dark cave, even more powerful mammoths were found. Their massive bodies and horns as hard as blades posed a huge threat to Li Zihe's battered mech. Oh. Today was truly awful, Li Zihe sighed helplessly, lamenting his luck. Although he knew it was an illusion, every feeling was vividly etched in his mind. The mammoth's fierce charge against the shattered mech made Li Zihe feel intense pain, a very real one. But as he used his deft combat skills to shred the mammoth into pieces, the sense of accomplishment of slaying a formidable foe filled him with a profound sense of satisfaction. Furthermore, with each successful slaying of his prey, Li Zihe mastered a wealth of intricate mech combat techniques. The memories embedded in his genes continuously strengthened, becoming imprinted upon his mind with a vivid reality. Ah! What a wonderful illusion! Li Zihe headed towards the deepest part of the black hole, ready to receive the final boss's immense experience. He was simply winning by chance, passively accepting all the experience and techniques. Then, Li Zihe spotted a queen insect and a group of elite guards. Come on. Give me more experience. The longsword swung out, accurately severing the wings of an elite flying dragon. Li Zihe's confidence surged. A few minutes later, Li Zihe fled in panic, a pack of mammoths in hot pursuit. Li Zihe's cockpit was pierced by insects, the bloody wound excruciatingly painful. But he'd learned a few more escape techniques. It was both painful and exhilarating. Chapter 44 7-Star Pilot. Li Zihe opened his eyes and slowly exhaled a breath that surprisingly had a faint bloody color. The killing secret realm training that just ended was too real. The mental power completely dominated the body to strengthen strength and technology, which actually caused Li Zihe to suffer some minor injuries. It was Li Zihe who had an extraordinary recovery ability to support him, otherwise he would not dare to try this killing secret realm lightly. Who knows what kind of battle he will encounter next time, and what kind of enemy will chase him and stab him. Li Zihe took out a cigarette and lit it, and in the mist of smoke, he soothed the trembling of his body and the excitement of his heart. But in just these 2 days, Li Zihe deeply felt that his ability to control the mecha was advancing by leaps and bounds, and he felt that he could even call himself an ace pilot. If I absorb more blood essence in the future, will I be able to see the history of the vampire race through the bloodline inscriptions, and use art to master all kinds of exquisite passive flirting techniques? Li Zihe was lost in thought, cigarette in hand, when an enemy report came over his communicator. Enemy vanguard units, 2 mechanized infantry regiments, spotted in the number 6 River Valley area. At noon, the Red Rock City scouts finally spotted the Federation's vanguard. "They're here," Li Zhe stubbed out his cigarette. Number 6 River Valley was at the far right of the ambush circle, and he was at the far left, quite far away. Encircling them would take time. "Let these 2 regiments pass, notify Red Rock City to focus on defense, and the rest of us hold still." Mu Yu, the overall battlefield commander, made a decision to load the enemy deeper. A few hours later, 2 Federation mechanized infantry regiments occupied a tactical support point at the rear of the encirclement, and the main Federation force appeared. A large number of infantry fighting vehicles arrived from the western wilderness, advancing rapidly along River Valley number 6 toward Red Rock City. Low-altitude assault ships patrolled overhead, scouting, ready to engage in combat. The Federation's mecha battalion also appeared, with at least 2 mechas operating on the ground, providing cover for the rapidly advancing infantry. Is this a plan to brute force the enemy? Li Zhe was puzzled. The mecha battalion was a standard assault unit, supposed to hide in the shadows, seeking the enemy's weaknesses and aiming for a single strike. If used to cover ordinary mobile infantry as they were now, it would be like a tank babysitting the infantry, losing the surprise of a covert assault and significantly reducing its tactical threat. However, the Federation's cautious tactics also had their effect. Before the main force had fully entered the encirclement, a pilot discovered a Red Rock City ambush during counter-stealth reconnaissance, and the battle immediately began. Boom, boom, the Red Rock City ambush was well rested, and the Federation had the advantage in numbers, so the battle was intense from the outset. But halfway through his support, Li Zhe suddenly paused. Scanning the battlefield using his battlefield detection system, he suddenly sensed a resemblance to a secret killing zone from a few days prior. Li Zhe turned and plunged deeper into the dense forest. Li Zhe, what are you doing? There are 12 Federation mechas here. Come and cooperate with my sister. Ethan called out into the communicator. I'm going to sleep, you have some fun, won't ma? Ethan not only learned how to eat spicy chicken nuggets, but also learned how to curse from Li Zhe. Li Zhe found a dense bush and hid within it, manipulating the 20-meter-tall Bloodhammer mecha. The Red Rock City area is prone to year-round rainfall, and the abundant precipitation has resulted in extremely tall trees in the surrounding forest, many reaching nearly 100 meters in height, perfectly concealing the mecha's presence. Less than 10 minutes into his hiding, Li Zhe saw a herd of mutant animals running towards him from a distance, their panicked demeanor clearly a desperate attempt to escape. 3 mechas appeared in Li Zhe's field of vision, the leading mecha sporting 7 blood-red stars spray-painted across its chest. 7-star pilot? What a catch! Star Federation pilots like to paint their mechas with their battle records. 7 stars represent 7 mech kills. This is a remarkable achievement. Mechas are not fragile low-altitude fighters that can be taken down with a single missile. Hundreds of tons of armor give them exceptional defense, and their agility gives them exceptional battlefield survivability. Pilots who can control mechas are no fools. There's nothing shameful about running away when things look bad. Killing 3 mech pilots of the same rank earns them the title of Ace Pilot. Killing 7 mechas in a row is a feat worthy of boasting about being a super ace pilot. The 3 mechas before Li Zhe clearly didn't belong to the Federation's 3rd Army's regular mech unit. According to the Vampire's records, the 3rd Mech Battalion only had 2 6-star pilots and no 7-star pilots. 3 Federation mechas crept toward Valley number 6, their movements surprisingly gentle, not disturbing any of the trees, only startling small insects and animals in the underbrush. Li Zhe didn't dare to be careless, as the other mechas were clearly experienced and elite pilots. He shut off all electronic equipment and quietly followed the 3 mechas. The bulky, mechanically powered armor moved with a stealthy demeanor. This gentle mech control technique was something Li Zhe had learned in the Killing Secret realm. Learning it now proved effective, surpassing even those elite mechas. The 3 Federation mechas stopped at the edge of Valley number 6 and waited patiently. Amidst the raging battle in the valley, Mu Yu's Bloodblade mech stood out. Its starting movements drew the 3 mechas' attention, repeatedly attacking the Federation's defensive nodes and disrupting their strategic arrangements. The 7-star mechas gestured with their fingers, and the other 2 mechas removed the numerous parts from their backs and quickly assembled a strange device. Its arc-shaped antenna pointed skyward, resembling a radar. Once assembled, one mech knelt, and its pilot leaped from the cockpit. He climbed onto a seat beside the radar and began manipulating a telescope-like device, aiming at the Bloodblade mech in the center of the battlefield. A few seconds later, Li Zihe suddenly noticed the trees above the radar turning yellow, and several birds fluttered down. He suddenly realized this wasn't radar, but a high-powered main gun target designator, guiding the starship's targets. The ground environment on Crimson Star is complex, with a perpetually dense cloud cover and electromagnetic interference from the ground, making it difficult for starships to accurately target ground targets from space. However, if someone on the ground locked onto a target using a designator, the starships in the sky could accurately strike a narrow area on the ground based on the lock signal. Of course, the target had to be sufficiently valuable. A starship's main gun isn't a Gatling gun, capable of firing thousands of rounds without a second thought. Its energy source isn't gunpowder or batteries, but extremely expensive crystals. A single salvo fired from space at a planet's surface could cost the equivalent of several mechas. If several salvos were unleashed, several mecha battalions would be depleted. Furthermore, to precisely strike the target, the starship would have to lower its altitude to the outer reaches of the atmosphere, exponentially increasing the risk. And now, they clearly found a sufficiently valuable target, Mu. In Valley Number 6, a large number of mobile infantry, tanks, and mechas, acting under the command of their officers, swarmed around Mu's Bloodblade mecha like insects, briefly confining her within a tight radius. Mu, be careful. We're detecting the starship's main gun indicator. However, Li Zihe was too close to the indicator, and the communication system was experiencing strong electromagnetic interference, making it impossible to contact Mu. Li Zihe calmed himself, silently unsheathed the kinetic cannon on his back, and switched to firing flares into the sky. Then the Bloodhammer mech erupted with a roar, charging toward the indicator while firing. The Federation pilots panicked slightly, completely baffled as to how a mech weighing over 100 tons could get within 100 meters without being detected. But the 7-star pilot reacted with remarkable speed, counterattacking Li Zihe with a diamond-shaped composite shield that blocked all of Li Zihe's kinetic blasts. The two mechas, originally only a few hundred meters apart, were instantly brought together by the collision. Li Zihe flung his kinetic cannon like a throwing weapon and clenched his mechanical fists to deliver a vicious blow. The 7-star mech dodged to the side, unsheathing its double-bladed battle axe from behind and slashing upwards with a vicious blow. Accurate and ferocious, its capture capabilities were top-notch. But the Bloodhammer mech executed a sideways straddling maneuver, its mechanical legs unexpectedly crossing the battle axe. However, its mechanical feet failed to dodge and were struck by the double-bladed battle axe. Crack, the double-bladed battle axe jammed. Some book friends said that they don't like watching mecha battles. What I actually want to say is that these are just some elements required by the plot, and they are transitional plots. If you really don't want to watch it, you can fast forward. After 10,000 or 20,000 words, it will be the plot that everyone likes. Chapter 45 Tearing Pain. Crack, as Li Zihe, with an incomplete sideways hurdle, caught the 7-star mech's double-bladed battle axe, the smooth tactical movements of both sides were halted. Any mech, regardless of its design focus, must possess superior maneuverability. Therefore, the mech's mechanical legs are of paramount importance, not only constructed of exceptionally tough materials but also equipped with joints to assist the engine. Li Zihe, taking advantage of the situation, rolled over and applied a spiraling force to the legs, unscrewing the opponent's double-bladed battle axe with a clanging sound. The 7-star mech suddenly exerted force, attempting to withdraw its double-bladed battle axe, but Li Zihe's legs were extremely tricky, and it ultimately lost its grip and was forced to relinquish its weapon. However, the 7-star mech's pilot was decisive. After relinquishing its battle axe, it didn't retreat. Instead, it pressed closer to Li Zihe, slamming its mechanical fist into his cockpit. But just then, an explosion erupted from behind it. Boom! It turned out that the kinetic cannon that Li Zihe had just thrown out was dodged by the 7-star mech by moving sideways, but it strangely drew an arc and hit the other mech without a pilot. The pilot was operating the pile of high-powered target indicators. His mech's hatch was wide open, and the kinetic cannon hit it at a small angle, instantly sending out a large shower of sparks. 1 kill. The Federation mech squad had 3 mechas, and Li Zihe killed one of them at the beginning. The other mechs subconsciously rushed towards Li Zihe, obviously intending to fight Li Zihe 1-on-2 with the 7-star mech. But he seemed to have thought of something, stopped, blocked the indicator that indicated the target of the space starship, took off the kinetic cannon and aimed at Li Zihe. The indicator was not protected, and if Li Zihe threw another object at it, it might be directly scrapped. Li Zihe fell to the ground, his two mechanical legs tangling with those of the 7-star mech. He suddenly unleashed his ground combat techniques, tumbling into tumble with the 7-star mech. He had already discerned that the 7-star mech's pilot, within this mech squad, was not only skilled and combat savvy, but also of respectable pedigree. The other two mechas were standard Federation Tiger Fang series reconnaissance mechas, but Li Zihe couldn't name the 7-star mech. Its sleek frame, exceptional explosive power, and aesthetically pleasing mechanical exterior made it look like the kind of custom mech favored by the wealthy members of the Federation. What do wealthy members value most? Their lives, of course. As expected, the Federation mechas, hoping to deploy their kinetic cannons for support, hesitated to fire at Li Zihe. Li Zihe was currently positioned beneath a 7-star mech, and the intense tussle between the two mechas threatened to result in accidental injury. The 7-star's mech showed no sign of fear. It flexed its mechanical fists, hammering away at Li Zihe's head and cockpit, seemingly gaining the upper hand. Cracks quickly appeared on Li Zihe's newly replaced cockpit cover. The custom mechas were indeed high-end. Even Li Zihe's Bloodhammer, a respectable mech, was completely outmatched by them. Li Zihe felt like he was in the same predicament as Count Wilf. He possessed sufficient strength, but the mech's mechanical limitations limited his ability to withstand the 7-star's mech's onslaught. Had Li Zihe not mastered numerous mech combat techniques, constantly dodging and evading them, he would have been no match. While displaying weakness, Li Zihe sought opportunities to strike back. Despite his anxiety, his tactics remained calm and rational. Finally, Li Zihe found his moment, manipulating the Bloodhammer's arms to secure the opponent's upper body. Then, bending his knees and raising his legs, he delivered a series of knee strikes between the opponent's legs. The balance of a humanoid mecha depends not only on the pilot's control but also on the compensation of a dynamic balance system. The lowest part of the mecha's waist, where the movement center is located, is the most suitable location for this. Just now, the 7-star mecha used its battle axe to retaliate against Li Zihe's boast. Now, Li Zihe returned the favor, severely humiliating the mecha. What else does a rich kid care about besides his life? Face? With a vicious knee strike, Li Zihe successfully shattered the mecha's dynamic balance system. The 7-star mecha's body shook violently, clearly affected by the dynamic balance system, and it lost control for a moment. Li Zihe seized the opportunity to free one hand, snatched up the double-edged battle axe from the ground, and threw it. The mecha guarding the signal indicator stepped forward to block, but the battle axe spun past him, missing his intended path by a hair's breadth. Is this an A-level tactical technique? Is he A-level? The Tiger Fang mech's pilot was bewildered. Li Zihe's throwing technique was completely incomprehensible to him. He simply thought it resembled the legendary tactics of a high-level A-level mech. The double-edged battle axe spun and struck a tree several dozen meters tall. The immense impact severed the trunk, sending it crashing down towards the signal indicator. Li Zihe suddenly revved his engines, the high-energy engines he had personally tuned instantly going into overclocking. He flung the 7-star mech atop him and lunged towards the signal transmitter. After being knocked to the ground, the 7-star mech seemed to snap out of its daze, reaching for its long-range weapon from its back, ready to strike Li Zihe from behind. But Li Zihe didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, swinging the hammer at his waist like a burst of Thor. Is he trying to kill himself? The Federation mech assigned to guarding the signal transmitter had just started up, attempting to fend off the several-meter-tall tree. Suddenly, Li Zihe charged at him, leading to fatal miscalculation. He had assumed Li Zihe was no match for the 7-star's mech, considering the difference between a standard and custom mech, and even the pilot's tactical skills. But those few seconds of battle had completely overturned his perception. The 7-star's mech hadn't even managed to defeat the Bloodhammer in the previous clash, and now it had been easily shrugged off. It was obvious to him that Li Zihe's previous show of weakness was a false alarm. Moreover, the enemy had completely disregarded its own defenses, willingly willing to destroy the signal indicator even at the risk of being hit by the 7-star's mech. The Federation's Tiger Fang mech struggled to turn and intercept Li Zihe's Bloodhammer mech, confident that the 7 stars mech would make the right move. Reluctantly, the 7 stars mech shifted its guns, and with a roar, it sent the collapsing tree flying, eliminating the danger of the signal indicator being crushed. However, the Tiger Fang's tactical attempt to intercept Li Zihe had failed. Li Zihe's hammer suddenly flew out, seizing the opportunity as the Tiger Fang mech turned and started. At an unexpected angle, it slipped past its mechanical arms and delicately struck the side of its cockpit. The canopy flew off, revealing the pale, horrified face of a middle-aged pilot. This is a grade A tactical technique. Boom! Li Zihe's left arm flung back, his shield perfectly anticipating the impact, blocking the kinetic energy round fired from the 7-star mech behind him. The Bloodhammer mech charged forward, unerringly shoulder striking the Tiger Fang mech back several meters. Without the protection of the cockpit, the pilot suffered immense impact loads and was flung out of the cabin. A double kill. Li Zihe now faced nothing but the signal indicator, operating at full power. Behind him, the 7-star mech once again raised its cannon, aiming at his engines. But it was too late. Li Zihe swept his arm, shattering the signal indicator and the pilot aboard. He then leaped lightly into the jungle, avoiding the 7-star mech's persistent lock. Everything happened in a split second. The 7-star mech had no idea that a brilliant pilot from the Federation couldn't stop Li Zihe for even a second. Who the hell is he? But at the moment the signal indicator was destroyed, a hole suddenly opened in the thick clouds, and a laser beam over 10 meters in diameter, imbued with terrifying power, struck the battlefield. Li Zihe cried out in shock, "Muayu!" Only then did he feel the pain tearing through his heart. Chapter 46. Who is he? The starship's main gun fired more than once. Holes appeared in the clouds, and beams of laser light pierced the battlefield, radiating outward from the point of impact of the first salvo. The energy contained in the laser beams penetrated the ground and exploded, lifting the entire surface. The powerful shockwave ravaged everything in the vicinity, killing all ordinary mobile infantry. Even within Li Zihe's Bloodhammer mech, the intense electromagnetic shock caused numerous electronic devices to either be damaged or automatically shut down for protection, switching the control system to pure mechanical mode. In a full minute, a 1-kilometer wide no-man's land was created in the Valley of Six. Li Zihe's heart ached, a pain he had never expected. His relationship with Muyu had always been strange. Even though Muyu respected him immensely and regarded him as the patriarch of the Red Castle family, Li Zihe had never considered the Red Castle Manor his home, nor the hundreds of thousands of people in Hongyan City his subjects, as Muyu had claimed. But as he watched the starship's laser cannons rain down upon the battlefield like a catastrophic retribution, he felt a loss of his blood connection to Muyu. The feeling was truly like the loss of his parents so many years ago. This intense panic fermented fiercely within Li Zihe, spreading to the surroundings. Then, suddenly, he received a response from Muyu. Muyu's emotions were also fluctuating with anxiety and panic, rapidly approaching Li Zihe's direction. Li Zihe's heart suddenly settled. As long as he was alive, it was fine. Even the most serious injuries would only cost him a few drops of source blood. "I'll deal with that rich kid first." Li Zihe turned back, only to find that the 7-star mech, having completed its mission, had decisively retreated, its nimble figure already 100 meters away. But the Bloodhammer mech suddenly erupted with a sharp, intense roar, all its auxiliary and main engines going into overclocking as it pursued the 7-star mech. Li Zihe was furious. This wasn't a harmonious society. If your child got beaten up and you fought back, you'd still be in jail for 2 days. He was going to kill him, no questions asked. He also assumed the rich kid must be wealthy, and if he were captured, he'd be able to fetch a large ransom. The two mechas raced through the jungle at lightning speed. However, the 7-star Metro was a custom-built one, its technology significantly superior to Li Zihe's Bloodhammer, and its explosive speed was immense. At this point, Li Zihe's newly mastered escape skill came in handy. The mighty Bloodhammer darted through the dense jungle with the agility of a raccoon cat. The distance between the two mechas dwindled, 100 meters, 80 meters, 60 meters. The 7-star mecha in front suddenly veered, heading to the left side of the jungle. Li Zihe panicked. The jungle's left edge ended in a wilderness. On the unobstructed plain, his agility wouldn't be an advantage. Unfortunately, he had just discarded his ranged weapon as a throwing weapon. Li Zihe was terrified, but the two mechas still managed to break free from the jungle. Woo, the 7-star mech's engines also overclocked. Without the obstruction of the trees, it could finally unleash its full power. But just as it did so, a warhammer flew from behind, swiping in an uncanny arc, and struck its cockpit. The moment the 7-star mech's engines exploded, its evasive capabilities were reduced to a minimum, and Lineage seized that moment. Bang, the 7-star mech spun to evade, but the warhammer shifted its angle slightly, still smashing the cockpit canopy off. The 7-star mech spun 360 degrees in the air, allowing Lineage to clearly see the other mech's pilot. He was a delicate-looking young man, but his face was now utterly pale. Lineage had even taken into account the angle of his evasion. If the other mech had a projectile weapon at that moment, he would surely be dead. The chase continued, but after more than 10 minutes, Lineage was forced to stop. His bloodhammer was at its limit, its engines nearly exploding, while the 7-star mech was already 2 kilometers away. PFFT, damn you Krypton gold gambler, Lineage spat in exasperation. Mewu's blood blade caught up, and only after discovering Lineage was safe and sound did her anxiety and panic slowly subside. Father, are you alright? I'm fine. What happened to you? How did your blood connection break? Lineage realized he wasn't quite ready for this, and his tone was anxious, somewhat undermining his image as a cool father. Mew was silent for a moment before replying, I activated the ultimate power of my true name, temporarily blocking the blood connection. It's not my fault, father, you saved me again. Mew had noticed the scattered indicator debris on the ground as she chased him, and she understood what Lineage had just done. No, I clearly felt like I wasn't in time just now. How did you manage to avoid the starship's main gun coverage? I sensed it the first time father felt anxious, so I was on high alert. I inherited your gift for danger perception, and before danger arrived, I activated my true name secret technique to spoof the indicator's lock signal. Lineage knew that Mewu's true name secret technique could block and distort enemy perception within a radius of hundreds of meters, but he had no idea it could also deflect and spoof electromagnetic signals. At this moment, Ethan's blood sniper also ran over, angrily saying, Lineage, you really surprised me today. You managed to take out 2 mechas without making a sound. Ethan also saw the wreckage of the indicator and the Federation mecha. Destroying the enemy's signal indicator and defeating 2 mechas was quite an impressive feat. Lineage asked coldly, is the battle over? Ethan, why are you so idle? HMPH, Ethan turned and left, as quickly as he came. The war was indeed over. While it was rare for a starship's main guns to aid a ground assault, it was not unprecedented. However, for a starship to cover its own infantry positions was extremely rare. The 1-kilometer-wide no-man's land in Valley No. 6 was almost entirely covered by the Federation forces. 4 hours later, hundreds of miles from Valley No. 6, a light starship quietly landed, picked up the stealthy 7-star mech, and took off, bounding for space. The 7-star mech's cockpit opened, and a handsome young man climbed down the stairs. Even Lineage hadn't imagined that the pilot he'd fought so closely with was actually such a shy-looking young man. As soon as the young man landed, several attendants approached him, carrying towels, tea, and various beverages. The young man wiped his face with a towel, drank 2 cups of tea and a glass of wine, and then waved them off. The butler in a neat tuxedo walked over and said, Master, you have worked hard. The young man walked towards his rest area with his head down, and suddenly said, Prepare 2 gifts and send them to the 2 pilots who died. Express my apologies to their families on my behalf. Master, you don't need to blame yourself so much. This mission is inherently dangerous. They are all federal soldiers and are ready to sacrifice. The butler patiently counseled the young man, but the young man insisted, do as I say. The young man walked towards his lounge and found that the butler was still following him, so he asked, Uncle Zhang, is there anything else? Master, the headquarters has notified us of a meeting in 3 hours, and you can refuse to attend. The young man frowned. What happened? The battleship Whittle was severely damaged and may be difficult to repair. The young man's brows tightened. Isn't that expected? Compared to a vampire who has awakened his true name and is very likely to grow into Duke, isn't it worth it? Butler's Hongbo said helplessly. The Countess is still alive. This mission was not completed, and many soldiers of the Third Army were accidentally injured. Command will investigate those responsible, but I've already strongly protested on your behalf. The young man muttered. Failed? How could that be? Butler's Hongbo said, "It must have been the starship's gunners who missed their target. The environment on the surface of the Crimson Star is unique, so it's normal for targets to miss their target." The young man was silent for a few seconds, then slowly shook his head. "Wake me up in 2 hours, I understand, young master, but I need to speak to my wife first. If she disagrees, you don't need to attend this meeting. After all, your every word and action affects the honor of the Qin family." The young man nodded and closed the door. Butler's Hongbo could see that the young man was unhappy, but it was his duty. His young master wasn't supposed to participate in this mission, he had just gone along to gild his reputation. Instead, something like this had happened. If others seized on it and made a big fuss about it, it would be a huge deal. As for the sacrifices of those pilots and tens of thousands of Federation soldiers, they were nothing compared to the Qin family's reputation. The young man entered his lounge, closed the door, and fell headfirst onto the bed, no longer his calm and composed image. He was really tired, and the escape journey of the past few hours was simply hard to describe. Whenever he closed his eyes, the shadow of a Bloodhammer mecha would appear in front of him. It was lingering and unpredictable. If his Bumblebee mecha had not used an expensive nuclear source engine that could be continuously overclocked to maintain an ultra-power state, it would have been really difficult to get rid of the ghostly Bloodhammer. At the last moment of escape, the Bumblebee mecha abandoned all its skills and tactics, and just fought a straight line with the Bloodhammer in the wilderness, barely getting rid of him. Who is he? Damn Supervision Department, why didn't they investigate such an important enemy? Chapter 47 Young Master Qin. Thousands of kilometers above the Crimson Star, a space fleet hovered silently. Dozens of small and medium-sized starships were spread out across hundreds of cubic kilometers, forming a dense defensive formation, guarding the 3 large starships at the center of the fleet. Any aircraft attempting to approach this star field would be rigorously interrogated by these escorting ships. Any malicious intent detected would be immediately driven away or even destroyed. At 2:50 p.m., a light starship flew in from afar and sailed directly into the fleet. All the escorting ships made way for it, some even flashing salutation lights in accordance with ancient etiquette. The reason for all this was a bird emblem on the light starship's bow. With its pointed beak, crimson feathers, and long tail, it resembled the legendary fire-eating bird, possessing the power to harness flames. The Qin family of Nanshan Star, a prominent interstellar family with a millennium of history, had produced countless heroes throughout its history and was one of the founders of the Interstellar Federation. Even though the Federation constantly preaches equality and freedom, no civilian considers themselves equal to the Qin family. Within the Star Federation, countless Qin family members control important positions of power. Any Qin family member a civilian encounters finds ways to rise through the ranks, easily becoming their immediate superiors. It's unheard of that the Qin family is treated the same as ordinary civilians. A light starship approached the center of the fleet, slowly approaching the Qingjiang, one of the 3 larger starships. It then erected a transparent, enclosed gangway, connecting the 2 ships. A handsome young man in military uniform, accompanied by his butler, crossed the gangway and, midway through, suddenly turned to look to the right. It was the Whittle, another large battleship in the fleet. A hole spanning hundreds of meters had been torn through the center of its nearly 1,000-meter-long hull, its interior a glaring sight of disarray and tatters. The butler's gaze sharpened upon seeing the gaping hole in the Whittle. The starship had dedicated repair personnel and emergency supplies, ready for immediate repairs during combat. But now, half a day had passed, and the Whittle had bared its wounds, clearly intended for his young master to see. "Young master, this is a provocation to our Qin family. We should retaliate fiercely and make those foolish, untouchable people pay." The handsome young man shook his head slightly. "No need. The more arrogant they are now, the more ashamed they will be later." The 2 crossed the gangway and passed through the isolation pod for a second pressure adjustment before entering the Qingjiang. The hatch opened, revealing several Federation soldiers waiting at the entrance. Judging by the epaulets on his shoulders, they were actually Federation officers. "Young master, thank you for your hard work. Young master, thank you for your hard work." The handsome young man frowned, raised his hand in a military salute, and then staggered around the majors, lieutenant colonels, and colonels, heading into the starship. The officers quickly turned and saluted the young man. The butler followed the young man, muttering a soft curse as they passed the group of officers. Stupid, since the Qin family's young master had come in uniform, he was obviously expected to follow the rules of the Federal Army. Yet, a group of officers affiliated with a Qin clan came to greet him at the cabin door. Who was he trying to impress? Could it be that the Qin family's rules were superior to the federal military laws? Even if that were the case, it was impossible to expose them as a culprit and maliciously attack the Qin family as a cancer in the federal army. Although such attacks were a common occurrence every year. After the Qin family's young master and the butler left, the federal officers looked at each other and smiled. They were all outstanding talents trained by the Qin family, and each of them had stepped on others to get to where they were. How could any of them be stupid? If they came to greet the young master, they would at most be called stupid. But if they didn't come to meet him, what if the mistress found out? Haha. Have you ever heard of the crime of disrespect? The young master had come to the military to polish his skills, but a starship accidentally damaged a friendly force, and they were still holding him responsible. A group of Qin family members watched their master come for questioning. Should they remain indifferent? Although the Qin family's influence within the Third Army was not strong, they had to solemnly declare their stance and position, firmly upholding the Qin family's honor and dignity, and making those who wanted to cause trouble for the young master consider the consequences of daring to offend the Qin family. At 2:59, the young master of the Qin family and his butler arrived at the conference room in the center of the Qingjiang. A civilian staff member opened the door for him. Major Qin, please come in. The handsome young man did not enter directly. Instead, he said coldly at the door, Qin K, a pilot of the 8th Mecha Battalion of the 3rd Army, has been ordered to appear for questioning. Qin K looked gentle and frail, like a shy high school student, but his words were filled with a fierce and imposing aura. In the conference room, a group of officers, their epaulets covered in stars, all looked toward the door. As their eyes swept over the handsome young man with a single star on his shoulder, they felt a chilling pressure. The young master of a wealthy family, a direct descendant of the starry sky, truly possessed an extraordinary aura. At the head of the long conference table sat a middle-aged general. He rolled his eyes and spoke calmly. Come in, and take a seat, Qin K said indifferently. Thank you, General Luo. He stepped through the door and walked to the only empty seat. His butler followed, pulled out a chair for him, and waited for him to sit. The butler remained, standing behind Qin K, his chin slightly raised, his arrogance evident. A small commotion erupted in the conference room. This was a military meeting, and Qin K's butler was not a soldier. His sharply tailcoat, white shirt, and bow tie made him stand out among the green and blue uniforms. My apologies, my young master has only been in the army for a month, so he's unfamiliar with many of the rules. Madam has instructed me not to let him suffer any injustice. As the butler finished speaking, the expressions of those in the conference room varied. Some were angry, some lowered their heads in silence, and some were whispering among themselves. But no one uttered a single rebuke. General Luo, at the head of the meeting, pushed his glasses again. All right, meeting. The meeting began with a representative of the 3rd Army's Marines, responsible for the ground offensive, giving a detailed account of the Battle of Valley 6. When discussing the final stages of the battle, he loudly denounced the starship's main guns for wiping the ground. You wiped out tens of thousands of our soldiers in one go. Are you the vampire's accomplices? Our casualties for the whole year were less than 10,000. How much benefit did you get from Hongyan City? Bang! The representative of the space fleet in blue uniform slammed the table and shouted angrily, We fired strictly in accordance with your instructions and signals. In order to support you, the Army, we lost hundreds of crew members. The keel of the wheel was bent. You are responsible for this loss. I am not responsible. The blood of tens of thousands of my brothers is still flowing in the number 6 River Valley. Who should I hold responsible? You? Another fleet officer suddenly stood up, pointed at the nose of the Army representative and shouted, Try to curse again. The 2 Army representatives stood up and began to roll up their sleeves. Try it. There are also many factions in the Federal Army. The conflict between the Army and the fleet has a long history. The former feels that they have fed the huge space fleet, while the latter believe that they have sheltered the Army barbarians, and they fight each other all day long. Bang, bang, bang. General Luo slammed his hands on the table repeatedly, prompting several officers who were on the verge of a fight to sit down with a groan. Technical officer, release the Whittle's firing data. A technical officer handed over a memory stick and projected it onto the conference room's equipment. Our technical department has analyzed it. The Whittle's main gun firing parameters are correct and very accurate. The fleet officers immediately shouted at the Army representatives, What else do you have to say? The army spokesperson responsible for land operations remained silent, but everyone looked at the silent Qin Ke. Qin Ke was silent for a moment, then tossed out a memory stick as well. Chapter 48. He is A-level. Qin Ke handed over the memory card, and a holographic video of the battle in Valley 6 appeared in the conference room. These images were all from Qin Ke's mech, but he had edited them, removing all scenes of his battle with Li Zihe. Only the battle scene in the valley remained, along with a few seconds of footage where Li Zihe destroyed the signal indicator. But it was these few seconds of footage that sparked a heated discussion in the conference room. Because Qin Ke was behind Li Zihe at the time, the video only showed Li Zihe rushing forward, knocking down the Federation mech with a shoulder charge, and then sweeping across the signal indicator. The specific details of the battle were obscured by the Bloodhammer mech, making it difficult for many to understand. Who's the pilot of this Bloodhammer mech? How did he kill Major Bull so easily? This footage has been edited. What happened in between? Was it a surprise attack by the enemy? Why wasn't there anyone on guard? I've battled a Bloodhammer mech before, and it doesn't seem that powerful. Is there something wrong with this video? Your pilot is not good, right? I think this pilot is amazing. His movements are as smooth as water, and his skills and tactics are at least A-level. Everyone present were military personnel, more than half of whom had experienced mechas before, and they immediately became fascinated by the Bloodhammer mech in the video. Silence. A general sitting next to General Luo stood up and sternly stopped the discussion in the conference room. He then asked Qin Ke, Major Qin, what important information are you trying to share with us by handing over this video? Qin Ke replied calmly, 2 things. First, you can clearly see that Major Luo Wei was manipulating the guidance module on the signal indicator for a long time. There's no issue of hasty guidance deviation. Second, the starship's main laser gun had already fired at the moment the signal indicator was destroyed and Major Luo Wei was killed. Therefore, the ground guidance team's mission was complete, and the responsibility for the accidental injury doesn't lie with the ground forces. How is that possible? Our main gun firing parameters are correct. The technical department has already reviewed them. The Space Fleet representative immediately expressed dissatisfaction. Qin Ke said coldly, I hope the technical department will carefully review this video footage and make a fair judgment. General Luo ordered, technical officer, immediately authenticate this video footage. The video authentication process was simple, and the technical officer quickly produced a result. It has been confirmed that the first shot of the Whittle's main gun was fired 0.08 seconds earlier than the signal indicator was damaged, but the locking accuracy of the signal indicator cannot be determined. The estimated deviation is no more than 300 meters. Nonsense. The firing position of the starship's main gun deviated by at least 1,500 meters. It would have been fine if you deviated to the vampire position. But you deviated to our soldiers, you murderers. You heard it too. The indicator was destroyed 0.08 seconds after we fired the first shot. The guidance signal must have deviated during the destruction process. The responsibility this time lies entirely with your army. Bullshit. Is your starship's main brain rusted or smoking? Can't you tell the abnormality from such a large-scale data change? Won't you cancel the bombardment? Do you have to take advantage of the opportunity to fire when you finally get it? How hungry are you? Although the soldiers of the Starship Force are all educated people, they can't withstand the provocation of a group of army barbarians. Immediately, someone picked up a chair and prepared to demonstrate his throwing skills. Bang, bang, bang. General Luo slammed the table again, a fierce, murderous look etched across his usually calm face. General Luo's name was Luo Han, a scion of the Luo family of Lake City, Zuxing. He graduated from the Starship Command Department of Zuxing Military University. At the age of 40, he was transferred from Space Fleet Command to the position of commander of the Federation's Third Army. He was considered a remarkable figure, a man of distinguished descent who had achieved success in his prime. However, after actually taking charge of the Third Army, he realized how difficult this position was. The military was rife with factions, and the major powerful families had long since infiltrated it. Every decision he made would affect the interests of certain individuals. The Lake City Luo family was only a third-rate family in the Interstellar Federation, lacking the foundation even compared to the Nanjing Qin family and other second-tier families. The appointment of him as commander of this army was a balance of power. Luo Han was usually cautious, but even clay had its own temperament, and today he couldn't help but lose his temper. Don't try to be clever with me. I know exactly what you're up to. Unless I ask, just shut up. Luo Han knew full well that the conflict between the Starfleet and the Army was centered around Qin Kai. After graduating from the military academy, Qin Kai didn't choose to advance in the Second Army, which was under the Qin family's absolute control, but instead joined the hodgepodge Third Army. Was this a sign that the Qin family was planning to get involved in integrating the Third Army? Luo Han couldn't be sure whether this incident was a technical or tactical error, or a malicious conspiracy. Luo Han adjusted his glasses and looked at Qin Kai. Major Qin, you were there. Who do you think is responsible for this incident? The surrounding officers all turned their attention to Qin Kai. They all saw that Luo Han had given the final say to Qin Kai. If you're not convinced, you can confront the Nanjing Qin family directly. You think I'm stupid enough to drive the Qin family's young master out of the Third Army? Yes, Major Qin is the primary eyewitness, and he has the most say. The Army representative immediately echoed Luo Han's decision. While the Army representative wasn't a member of the Qin family, Qin Kai's three-man mecha squad belonged to the Army, and naturally, they hoped Qin Kai would deliver a heavy blow to the Starfleet forces. With the Qin family's strength, no one needed to be acquitted. Even if they were wrongly accused, they would just have to endure it. After a moment's silence, Qin Kai spoke frankly, I bear some responsibility for this incident. I failed to properly protect the signal transmitter, leading to the deaths of my comrades, Bal and Luo Wei. As for the Starfleet's main guns misfire, I don't believe it was our mecha squad's fault. I hope to report this to Starfleet Command and have them send someone down to investigate. Qin Kai paused, then added, the intelligence department also made mistakes. This A-rank pilot isn't listed in the Red Rock City pilot directory. If he hadn't suddenly appeared, Luo Wei and Bal wouldn't have died, and the signal indicator wouldn't have been destroyed. A brief silence fell in the conference room. No one had expected Qin Kai to take some of the blame himself. Although he was only responsible for the sacrifice of 2 pilots, given his status as the young master of the Nanjing Qin family and the fact that it happened during the federal election, this small matter was bound to make the federal news. Butler's Hongbo, standing behind Qin Kai, glanced coldly at the officers in the conference room, noting down several individuals with suspicious expressions and preparing for future precautions. Luo Han suddenly asked, A-rank pilot? Major Qin, are you sure the pilot of that Bloodhammer mech is a vampire count? Qin Kai nodded silently. He wasn't sure, but if the other party was B-rank, what would that mean for him? Qin Kai was nominally a major pilot, which meant his superpower rank was C-rank, but he had been hiding his true strength. His true rank was B-rank, which meant he should have been awarded the rank of lieutenant colonel. Yet, the other party, facing 3 of his mechas, acted like they were no match for him and nearly killed him. He only managed to escape thanks to the power of his custom mech. If that vampire pilot wasn't A-rank, wouldn't a B-rank pilot like him be a joke? No wonder. I just watched the video and felt that Bloodhammer was off. I once fought at Blood Clan Count, a mech with a Bloodhammer like this one, and it had very strong close combat capabilities. It's impressive that Major Qin escaped from him. Qin Kai slowly raised his head and looked across at the black uniformed lieutenant colonel across from him, narrowing his eyes. The other officer seemed to be speaking for him, but in reality, he was blaming him. A 3-man mech squad went on a mission together, so why did others die while he escaped? Furthermore, the other officer was a lieutenant colonel, yet he brought up his past against a Blood Clan count. Wasn't that just self-aggrandizement and Qin Kai's devaluation? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Disdain for Free Rice. Third Army Intelligence Department, Lily, nice to meet you. The lieutenant colonel in black stood up, leaned forward, and stretched his hand across the conference table to Qin Kai. Qin Kai sat in the chair without moving a finger, looking coldly at Lily in front of him. After a few seconds, Lily retracted his palm and sat back. There was no embarrassment on his face, but a faint smile appeared on his face. It seems that Major Qin doesn't like the people in our intelligence department, but you're right. Major Qin also mentioned just now that the intelligence department is responsible for this accidental injury incident, and it's inevitable that there is some resentment in his heart. But Major Qin may not know that this time the intelligence about Huangyan City is the responsibility of the supervisory department, so I will truthfully feed back your opinions to the supervisory department. Qin Ke felt that Li Li's smile was very mean, and then he seemed to understand something. Anyone who dared to provoke himself, the young master of the Qin family, must be no ordinary person. Qin Ke turned his head slightly, and the housekeeper's Hongbo immediately leaned close to his ear. The master and servant made a whispering gesture, but the words they said were just loud enough for everyone in the conference room to hear. Someone from the Li family in Jingchuan, reporting to the young master, there is no one named Li Li among the 7 direct relatives of the Li family. Do I need him to report the situation to the supervisory department for me? He doesn't need to be nosy. Minister Yu of the supervisory department will report the reason to my wife in person. Oh, that's okay. Qin Ke sat upright, lowered his brows and stopped talking, his look of being absent-minded, as if what was happening around him had nothing to do with him anymore. But Li Li opposite him could no longer keep a smile on his face, and his face became a little ugly. He was really from the Jingchuan Li family, and after coming to the Third Army, he also regarded himself as a child of a wealthy family. The Li family is indeed a wealthy family in the Federation that is on par with the Nanshan Qin family, but in the eyes of the direct descendants of the wealthy family, he, a child of a wealthy family who is not a direct descendant, is no different from an ordinary family-born child. After all, in order to ensure the prosperity of the family, those wealthy bosses will take in concubines and give birth to heirs in droves. The difference in status between illegitimate children and legitimate children is huge. The conversation between Qin Ke and the housekeeper's Hongbo not only slapped Li Li in the face, but also attracted the attention of everyone around them, because they heard the word madam. Qin Ke's biological mother is the person in charge of the current Qin family. If she intervenes in this matter, the consequences will be beyond their control. Okay, we've concluded our discussion of the friendly fire incident. Let's begin discussing our next battle plan against Red Rock City, Luo Han began, and the conference room fell silent. Blackwater City's 8th and 12th divisions have completed their feint attack. Next, we'll attack Red Rock City. The conference room door suddenly opened, and an intelligence officer in a black uniform scurried in, placing a report in front of Luo Han. Luo Han glanced at it, his expression suddenly grim. The main force originally planned to attack Red Rock City should immediately retreat west of the Boundary River and await new combat orders. Luo Han adjusted his glasses. The Blood Clan's 8th Guards Brigade has suddenly arrived outside Red Rock City. Our battle plan must be adjusted. What? The Blood Clan has sent reinforcements to Crimson Star. Is this the infamous Blood Sea Skeleton Guards Brigade? Everyone in the conference room was shocked. The Blood Clan's 8th Guards Brigade is a mecha brigade with a main starship and 40 elite pilots. Their sudden entry into Huangyan City has completely disrupted the military balance of Scarlet Star. Luo Han continued to order, Lieutenant Colonel Li Li, you must immediately take your men to sneak into Huangyan City secretly to find out the Blood Clan's further movements and strategic intentions, and by the way, find out who the pilot of the Bloodhammer mecha is. Why do you want me to go to Huangyan City at this time? Li Li had just been humiliated by Qin Ke, and now he heard about this dangerous mission, and subconsciously refuted. Luo Han adjusted his glasses. The Blood Clan's 8th Guards Brigade suddenly arrived outside Huangyan City. We must know why they came to Scarlet Star and what they want to do. Isn't this the responsibility of your intelligence department? Li Li calmed down and nodded. Okay, General, I will organize people to go to Huangyan City as soon as possible. After hearing Li Li's ambiguous reply, Luo Han couldn't help but glanced at him with disgust, and looked down on this eccentric member of the Li family even more. He was sure that Li Li would send someone instead of leading the team himself and taking risks. Huangyan City, Hongbeo Manor, Li Zhe secluded courtyard. Ethan walked in with his hands in his pockets. After the dinner for 3 people that day, his relationship with Li Zhe had recovered a lot, and he began to come to eat every now and then. But today, as soon as he walked in, he felt a pain in the back of his head, his eyes went black, and he fainted on the ground with a thud. Li Zhe walked out of the kitchen, looked at the big wooden stick in Mu Yu's hand, and couldn't help complaining, "You are really ruthless, aren't you afraid of beating him, stupid?" "No, father, I have experience." Mu Yu lifted Ethan onto the sofa with one hand, unbuttoned his shirt, and exposed his chest, just like Sun Erniang opening a human meat bun shop. Li Zhe came over, took the source blood needle from Mu Yu's hand, endured the pain and pierced his heart, extracting 2 drops of source blood. The source blood with a hint of gold in the blood red color was suspended in the syringe, entwining and jumping with each other, as if two happy little lives were playing. "Father, it's too much, stop talking nonsense. Hurry up." Yu obediently took the source blood needle and stabbed it into Ethan's heart. Ethan soon trembled, like a fish thrown ashore struggling violently. Any shortcut has its commonality, that is, the higher the reward, the greater the danger, and the risk of blood correction, a heaven-defying method, is also extremely great. After a few hours, Ethan's condition gradually stabilized, and Yu noticed that Li Ziqi's face was slightly paler than usual. She had some words in her heart, but she couldn't say them. In the end, she could only ask carefully, "Father, can you tell me why you want to correct Ethan's blood in advance?" In fact, after Ethan received Li Ziqi's source blood correction last time, his bloodline strength has been growing rapidly, and has already touched the threshold of Earl. Given time, he will definitely be able to be promoted to Earl, and it won't be a problem to be promoted to Marcus. So when Li Ziqi suddenly expressed his intention to give Ethan source blood again this morning, Yu didn't quite understand, but since it involved her brother's future, she had no reason to refuse. He is too weak now, and he hasn't even awakened his true name. He can't help you at all. How can he sit firmly in the position of commander of the 8th Brigade? Yu understood, and felt both moved and helpless. Because Yu had awakened the secret of his true name, the Zhu Mu family had reported it to the Crimson Council. According to the convention of the Twilight Continent, a peerless genius like Yu must be trained intensively, and should be equipped with an elite guard force, so the Crimson Council allocated the 8th Guard Brigade to Yu. From now on, the 8th Guard Brigade is equivalent to the Red Castle family's private family soldiers, and after Yu discussed with Li Ziqi, Ethan became the new brigade commander. But when Li Ziqi inquired this morning, he found out that the 8th Brigade had 2 deputy brigade commanders, both of whom were senior earls. Poor parents in the world, they can beat their own children as they please, but they can't let them suffer outside. What if they are not strong enough and get beaten up? How can they lose face? Yu was moved and said softly, "It's okay, Father, as long as I am here, Ethan will definitely be able to sit firmly in the position of brigade commander." Li Ziqi waved his hand and said, "Ethan is a boy. He needs to experience the ups and downs of life on his own to grow better. You can give him the care of family affection, and let him do the rest." Although Ethan is over 100 years old, this age among the vampires is equivalent to the rebellious period of human beings. At this time, children hope that their fists are strong and they disdain to eat gigolos. Chapter 50. Your hair is too long. With the arrival of the Blood Clan Guard Brigade, the Federation's military operation against Red Rock City ended abruptly, and the Federation's main offensive target shifted to Kent City, thousands of miles away. The resulting tension in Red Rock City lasted only a few days before peace returned. Many Federation merchants who had left due to the war returned. "Master Luke, is Xiaowan back?" "No." "Then do you know where he went?" "How should I know? That kid is a playboy, he won't stay anywhere long." Li Ziqi visited Master Luke's antique shop again, but didn't see Xiaowan again. Master Luke didn't have his contact information. Li Ziqi knew he might never see the gentle and knowledgeable young man again. Returning to Red Castle Manor, Li Ziqi saw many Blood Clan happily packing their belongings, discussing the wonderful life they would return to on the Twilight Continent. Crimson Star is located on the outer edge of the Chaotic Galaxy, a chaotic zone where Blood Clan and Federation forces intermingle, creating a complex ecological and cultural environment. The Twilight Continent is the vampires' stronghold, the birthplace of vampire society, and the ideal place for them to live. Vampires describe it as a land of tranquility and peace, filled with clear springs, verdant grasslands, and an endless supply of food and happiness. Li Ziqi, observing them, felt as if some Chinese in the 1980s were yearning for life in America. Returning to his secluded courtyard, he found Ethan sitting on the sofa, legs crossed, deliberately swaying back and forth, looking like a show-off who needed to be dealt with. Li Ziqi knew why he was so showy. The day before yesterday, he had given him an injection and 2 drops of his own blood. After the bloodline was corrected, he finally ascended to the rank of Earl. Yesterday, Ethan eagerly visited the 8th Guards Brigade and engaged in a friendly sparring match with 2 disgruntled deputy commanders. It said he even broke one of them's legs. In vampire society, strength reigns supreme. The stronger and more ruthless one's tactics, the more respected one is. Ethan's immense strength had completely won the respect of the guardsmen who had looked down on him. So, Ethan was getting a little carried away, forgetting how Li Zhe had cornered him and thrashed him the other day. Li Zhe, observing Ethan's raised chin and defiant gaze, understood perfectly. This brat had come prepared, and he needed a beating. Interesting, Li Zhe had rejected Mu Yu's proposal again the day before yesterday, still not revealing his father's status to Ethan. Why? Even if Mu Yu concealed his respect for Li Zhe, some trace would still remain. That's why Li Zhe tacitly accepted the title of temporary partner between them, misleading others. But if Ethan also showed him respect, how could that be explained? A damn boy? Li Zhe didn't want to be exposed to everyone's gaze just yet, especially those of the vampire leaders. He asked Mu Yu to keep a low profile in front of the Duke, which was also a psychological reminder to himself. A low-key tiger gets a good meal, while an ostentatious black bear gets a lot of lumps. Besides, having a submissive Mu Yu in his life was enough. If Ethan kept fawning over him, what fun would there be in life? What would be the point? Who would he beat on a rainy day? Was he going to have another trumpet? Li Zhe pointed at Ethan's crossed legs and said coldly, "Ethan, you can beat children even when it's not raining." Ethan's face turned cold, and he raised his chin and said, "I'm warning you, Li Zhe. The person sitting before you is a noble earl. You must show me the proper respect, otherwise, noble earl? You?" Li Zhe interrupted Ethan's boast and said disdainfully, "Can an earl who hasn't even awakened his true name still be considered an earl? Earls like your sister are the real earls." Ethan's face darkened completely. He'd been enjoying a surge of success these past few days, wanting to show off at Li Zhe's place. Unexpectedly, Li Zhe struck him in the heart with a single blow. After undergoing a second correction, Ethan's bloodline had unleashed immense potential, his combat prowess far surpassing that of an average vampire earl. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to break the leg of a senior earl from the royal guards. Unfortunately, he hadn't awakened his true name like Mu Yu. Despite his exceptional strength, he lacked the qualifications to join the Scarlet Council and receive the focused training of the Twilight Continent. This had always been a thorn in Ethan's side, and now, provoked by Li Zhe's harsh poke, the young man flew into rage. "Li Zhe, do you know that if you hadn't saved my sister that day, I would have killed you today?" After the battle in Valley No. 6, the Federation's accidental casualties became clear. Mu Yu had concealed the secrets of his true name, and everyone assumed Li Zhe had sabotaged the signal indicator. Although Ethan didn't want to admit it, he felt a deep sense of indebtedness to Li Zhe. But the more he felt this way, the more he disliked Li Zhe. For example, when he left Red Rock City and returned to Twilight Continent, Mu Yu personally packed all of Li Zhe's belongings, a privilege previously reserved for Ethan. Li Zhe, equally displeased with Ethan, swept his legs apart with a sweeping kick. "Don't always use your sister as a shield. If it weren't for your sister, I'd break your legs today." Ethan suddenly stood up, hunched over, his fangs bared. Li Zhe crossed his arms and stared at Ethan coldly, plotting how he would strike him. Ethan was already a blood earl, while Li Zhe was still a blood baron. If a fight came to a head, he'd have to be cautious. But Ethan didn't take action directly in the end. Instead, he tried his best to control his emotions and said through gritted teeth, "My sister asked me to replace you with a Bloodblade mecha, but the Guards Brigade has its own rules. To qualify to control the Bloodblade, you must pass a series of assessments, so we have to fight, right?" Li Zhe looked at Ethan with disdain. "Open hatch combat. If you don't dare, call me father 3 times and I'll spare you." Ethan's ferocity completely erupted, his fangs bared again. Open hatch combat is a training mode for mecha combat. It is to remove the cockpit cover for combat training, making the pilot face the danger of mechanical collision. Without the shielding protection of the cockpit cover, any mistake could cost the pilot his life. Therefore, it is a strong test of the pilot's psychological endurance and a cruel psychological tempering. Li Zhe and Ethan arrived at the Red Castle clan's underground training grounds. Each chose a Bloodblade mech and quickly removed the cockpit cover using a robotic arm. Ethan, huffing, climbed aboard and prepared himself in the driver's seat. He seemed a changed man, his temper vanishing, his presence becoming calm and alert. An experienced pilot strives to maintain composure during combat. Ethan looked across at Li Zhe and said seriously, "I think you'd be better off with a Bloodhammer mech." With your abilities, you can't control a blood blade. Even if fall would injure you, Li Zhe's Bloodhammer mech was experiencing problems due to overclocking, so Mu Yu asked Ethan to transfer a blood blade from the 8th Guards Brigade to him. However, the blood blade was the Blood Clan's newest standard mech, and not every pilot could handle it. It was like that high-powered Mustang sports car with a Cobra logo on Lansing. If you don't master the accelerator, it could go careening into the ditch. To unleash the full potential of the Bloodblade mecha, not only does it require powerful superpowers to withstand intense maneuvering overloads, but it also requires sharp perception to support precise operation. Li Zhe started the Bloodblade's engine, switched weapons, selected a rapier, and gently swung it at Ethan. "Ethan, your hair is too long. You look like a delinquent, and it's annoying to look at, thanks to Feng Wujiushan. I've recorded the tip in my notebook and will update after it's released." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.